Good evening. Welcome to the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting. Today is January 24th. Now, meeting is now called to order. Greg, has the adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 4th, 2019. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 4th, 2019, and notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 4th, 2019.
Thank you, Greg. And please stand for flag salute. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Greg, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ness?
Here.
Mrs. Swartz?
Here.
Mr. Ritter?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Here.
Mayor Solin?
Here. Thank you. And next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. And any comments and motion to approve the agenda as is?
So moved.
Second.
For those all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone abstain or oppose? None? Agenda has been approved. Now, we have a packed agenda tonight, and I hope to get you out of here as quick as possible, but I can't promise. And now we're going to start with something great that we're going to recognize one of our own law enforcement officers, and David Weinert is being promoted to become a sergeant in our police department. And let's start with the oath of office for David, if he's here. Before we do that, obviously I want at first meeting, I'm telling you. And now before we get to it, I want to a little bit talk about Dave. Sergeant Dave Weinert is a 22-year veteran of the Chatham Township Police Department. Sergeant Weinert began his career in 1997 when he was hired as a civilian dispatcher for the Chatham Township Police Department. On August 1st, 1997, Dave was hired as a patrolman and completed the police academy in December 17. In 2004, he was transferred to the Detective Bureau, where he was responsible for general investigations and additionally was the juvenile officer for the department. In 2006, he was reassigned to the Patrol Division, where he has served as his squad's officer in charge in the absence of a sergeant. Dave has been the recipient of many departmental awards, including several life-saving awards. Sergeant Weinert is currently one of the department's radar instructors, a firearms instructor, and a rifle instructor. Dave has been active within the PBA, where he has served as delegate for past 14 years. Dave graduated from Chatham Borough High School, is a life member of Chatham Emergency Squad, and in his off time is a certified paramedic with Atlantic Mobile Health, and additionally is an active member with the Long Valley First Aid Squad, where he is part of the Rescue Services Unit. And I thank Dave myself for his service to Chatham Township Police Department, and I congratulate him and I congratulate his family and for being here, and thank you for being here. And let's get him promoted to sergeant. And oath of office we should proceed with. Okay, so Dave, would you like to come forward with your family? So I'm going to read it and you're going to read it out. I give your name in full.
I, David Weiner,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
of the United States and of the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same
and allegiance to the same,
and to the governments established
and to the governments established
in the United States and
in the United States and
this state under the authority of the people.
in this state under the authority of the people.
I do further solemnly swear
I do further solemnly swear
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties of the office of
all the duties of the office of
Police Sergeant according to the best of my ability.
Police Sergeant according to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Committee members, would you like to have a picture of the sergeant? Oh, shoot. Maybe we have a picture all together? Yes, sorry guys, I'm sorry.
No cake?
The budget has been approved yet.
Right, Tracy?
You got it.
Tracy.
Dave, stay there. Our guys stay here.
Sergeant, you want to
We are.
move all the chairs
Yep.
back?
You three guys stay there, we're gonna stay back here. Sergeant's in the middle.
We're out.
Split it out, guys. Split it out, come on this side.
Guys, ready?
Yeah. We good? Hold on.
Another one? Get everybody. Hold on, one. Thank you.
Oh, Joseph, the photo. Maybe we should come over with your mascots. That's fine. Obviously, she's,
No, I'm perfect. I don't make mistakes. Hey guys, let's take some pictures. Okay, guys, let's take some pictures. And they start taking them off the wall. And then
Greg, should... All right, thank you, and congratulations to Sergeant Weinert again, and we're going to continue with our agenda items. And now, next agenda item is we have a bunch of proclamations. And we're going to start with our first proclamation, National Catholic Schools Week. And I will read the proclamation, and you will need to bear with me for next few minutes as I read the proclamation. And I have to find the one. That's right. Okay. Whereas National Catholic Schools Week is the annual celebration of Catholic education in the United States. Catholic schools in New Jersey and across the nation will be celebrating from Sunday, January 27th, 2019 through Saturday, February 2nd, 2019 with the theme Catholic Schools Learn, Serve, Lead, and Succeed. St. Patrick's School will be observing various activities which will focus on the value that the Catholic education provides to young people and its contributions to our township and our nation. And whereas St. Patrick's School is located within the borders of Chatham Township and provides values-based education filled with faith, academic excellence, and dedication to community as well as intellectually stimulating environment that is rich in spiritual character and moral development. And whereas in 1872, the Sisters of Christian Charity founded St. Patrick's School in Chatham, New Jersey, and whereas the year 2019 marks 147th years of St. Patrick's School, continuing the mission of the Sisters of Christian Charity, which is to fulfill the educational ministry of the Catholic Church and to provide an all-encompassing spiritual, academic, cultural, and physical quality education for students in pre-K to grade 8 within Chatham Township. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Mayor and Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the state of New Jersey do hereby proclaim January 28, 2019 as St. Patrick's School Day and urge the citizens of Chatham Township to support the school. Approved the 24th day of January 2019. Typhoon Salant, Mayor. Congratulations. Is there anyone representing the St. Patrick's School here in the audience?
My neighbor, I can bring George tonight.
Okay, that's fine. So there's no one in the audience?
Well, I have been a member of St. Patrick's Church since 1990. I'm a proud supporter of Catholic education. I'm a proud supporter of Catholic ministries throughout not only our community, but throughout the United States. My husband is a member of the Knights of Columbus, proud supporters also of Catholic education. And I think it's wonderful for a change that we see Catholic education and Catholic spiritual objectives supported at this level. So I am happy to bring that to my friends and my associates at St. Patrick's School and St. Patrick's Church, including the pastor and the principal, and it is an honor for me to do so. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Karen, for your service to the community through the St. Patrick's School. And should I just give this to you? Okay, perfect. And, okay. Now, we have another one. The next one is Reverend Edward Holderson. He's here. I spoke with him earlier, and thank you, Reverend, for being here and actually for your service to the community through your church. And now I will read the proclamation. Again, bear with me. I know it's kind of a torture to listen when I read. So, but, that happens. All right. Whereas, for more than 3 decades, Reverend Ed Holderson has provided pastoral care and spiritual guidance and served as the 4th senior pastor for the congregation of the Chatham Township Presbyterian Church. And whereas Reverend Holderson received a Master's of Divinity degree from Princeton Theology Seminary in 1974 and Doctor of Ministry degree from Princeton Theological Seminary in 1999. But more importantly, received a bachelor's degree from the highly prestigious Lafayette College in 1971.
Go hard.
I want to say I went to Lehigh, but I don't want to do that. So, and I didn't. So, and Lafayette College in 1971, go parts and whereas Reverend Holderson served as the associate pastor of the Penfield Presbyterian Church near Rochester, New York, and as the senior pastor of First United Church, Silver Creek, New York, before accepting the call to Chatham Township. And whereas during his tenure as senior pastor, Reverend Holderson personally has preached, participated in, or officiated at approximately 1,300 sermons, 230 weddings, 450 baptisms, and 500 funerals. Whereas Reverend Holderson oversaw an expansion to the church facility which resulted in additional church school classrooms, Stanley Nursery School, a youth suite for the growing youth program, accommodations to host outside disaster recovery groups, and meeting places for community groups. And whereas Reverend Holderson has announced his retirement effective February 1st of 2019, proclaim now, therefore, I, Typhoon Selen, the mayor of the Township of Chatham, do hereby proclaim and declare February 1st, 2019 as Reverend Ed Holderson Day in the Township of Chatham in the state of New Jersey, and wish him well in his retirement. Congratulations. Now, would you like to come here and we have some, meet with the committee members, plus we have a picture with you and maybe with your family. Second. Second. Oh, I'm sorry. Just correct me if I do something wrong.
Congratulations,
Thank you
Reverend.
very much.
Thank you for your service to this
Thank you.
great
Thanks a lot.
Your service.
So lucky to have
Pardon?
you.
Sure.
This is the 13,400th sermon I'll give right now. Just briefly, it's a great honor. Having done some work with the school district here, I appreciate it. When we came with our children here. We now have 4 children. 2 live in Chatham. One lives in New Providence, one in Easton, and one's in the back screaming, the grandchild. What's really kind of exciting is 2 of our children will be already sending their children to Chatham schools where they went to as well. I got here during the Reagan administration, made it to the Trump administration, but I've enjoyed being here. Wonderful congregation, and I've loved living in Chatham Township. We now live out in Gillette, but we'll be staying in the area. Thank you for your kindness and recognizing it. Good place to spend 30 years, believe me. This is the newspaper, right? Yeah, she was there. She was there Sunday, yes, over the years.
One more, guys.
Marlene. One more.
This goes to the church.
Wonderful retirement.
No, I can't. Thank you. I will on
One more, kid.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, and let's, now the torture continues, and we have one more proclamation. And I will read it for you. It's the whole page. It's a resolution, and Resolution 2019-054, Resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham honoring Thomas E. Chikaron. For his years of faithful and dedicated service to the residents of Chatham Township. Whereas Thomas E. Chikaron began service as the Township Administrator on April 10, 2000, and has served continuously in that office since that time. And whereas Tom also served as the Township's Certified Municipal Finance Officer until 2010. And whereas Tom has also served as Deputy Zoning Officer, Affordable Housing Liaison, Joint Insurance Fund Commissioner, Contract Compliance Officer, and served the Township as Class 2 Planning Board member for the past 15 years. And whereas Tom guided the Township through recovery from major storms, development of the Joint Recreation Program and the Joint Municipal Court, the purchase of significant open space purchases such as Kirby Farm, Woodland Park, Giralda Farms, Upper Hillside, and also the settlement of the Township's third round affordable housing obligation. And whereas Tom has overseen the completion of numerous capital improvement projects, including the resurfacing of all municipal streets, the purchase of much-needed equipment and trucks for our volunteer fire departments and Department of Public Works, the consolidation of the Township's 2 sewer treatment plants, which resolved long-standing issues with DEP permitting, improvements to all of the Township's recreation facilities, which included the complete reconstruction of Shumpike Field and installation of an all-weather turf field and lights, and many improvements to Colony Pool including the replacement of the main wall, all while consistently providing the township with annual operating budgets that have kept the local tax rate largely unchanged. And whereas Tom has provided guidance and good counsel to mayors and members of the Township Committee and the Township staff and has offered opinions, both wanted and unwanted, to anyone who wanted or needed one, while always bringing a sense of humor to the performance of his duties. Whereas Tom Chickaron is finally retiring from public service effective February 1st, 2019, 36 years after he began. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham that we hereby recognize and extend our deep appreciation to Thomas E. Chickaron upon the occasion of his retirement and extend to him and his wife Mary Beth, sons Austin and Marshall, and daughters Manon and Shay our best wishes for success and happiness in the future, and urge the residents of Chatham Township to join us in saying good riddance and and don't let the door hit you in the butt. And adopted January 24th, 2018. Congratulations. You want to say a few words, or? Yeah.
Before anybody thinks ill of our new mayor, I actually wrote that last part. So it seemed too serious to me. So you all, those of you who know me, know that I do like to try to inject some humor into these things. After all, we're not doing brain surgery here. I would like to thank a few people, and in the hope this doesn't sound like a lame Oscar speech, but I need to start with thanking my wife and my children. When you serve in a position like this, or an elected position like the folks up here, your family serves with you. You know, they hear the good and the bad. My family has always been by my side, supporting me, and they've made it possible to sit through the drudgery that we often go through here, because there was always a goal at the end, and we're now approaching that end. I would also like to thank the Township Committee for tolerating me and supporting me over these many years. I want to particularly thank the original committee that selected me back in 2000. Mayor Tom Patterson, committee members Abby Fair, Sue Hogue, Fred Poche, and Bill Colley. They gave me a chance to serve here, and I will be forever grateful for how things have gone for me and for my family. I am sure that that group of 5 people will be remembered as the smartest committee in the town's history. No offense to the present company. I want to thank the many employees that I have had the good fortune to work with. The township is blessed to have dedicated, hardworking people in all departments. The present management staff, Chief Tom Miller, DPW Manager Rich Young, CFO and Assistant Administrator Debbie King, will provide all of the support that our new administrator, Bob Hoffman, will need to be successful. And Bob is here. I appreciate that you came out tonight, Bob, and I will see you on Monday when we work together for a few days and try to give you the lay of the land. So if anybody who hasn't met Bob yet, there he is. Starting Monday, you call him, don't call me. Lastly, I want to thank the citizens who make Chatham the place that it is, which is the best town in the state of New Jersey. There's a team of, it's a town of volunteers. The Green Village Fire Department, Chatham Township Fire Department, Chatham Emergency Squad, Planning and Zoning Board members, Environmental Commission members, Open Space Committee members, that list just goes on and on. All of our athletic teams that are now run by parents from top to bottom. They do their own fundraising, they do their own registrations, they order their own uniforms. We still provide a certain level of administrative support and support to them through by providing fields that are top-notch and second to none. But none of these things could happen in this town without the work of thousands of people over the years. And I want to make sure that I acknowledge that everything that we have ever achieved here has always been a team effort. And I'm part of a team, and I've been proud of that. So thank you.
Tom, we want to have a picture with you.
Well, we,
haven't done that in 19 years.
before we do the picture, Tom, if we can say a few words. I just want to say, you know, it's been an honor and a privilege working alongside Tom in my years on the committee. As he said in his remarks, he's a man that isn't always short of words, and he says what he means and he means what he says. And I find that to be a very refreshing an administrator. And he's always had the back of the committee, but in having the back of the committee, he's always had the back of the citizenry here and the residents. He's worked tirelessly over these past 19 years to make Chatham the township that it is and the wonderful place it is to raise a family, to live and retire, as it were. So, Tom, I just want to say thank you very much for your guidance, your support, your advice, and all that you've done for our community. Along those lines, Rich Young and the DPW have a special gift for you, as it were, that Rich will bring up now. In addition,
I need a pickup truck.
this can go on your pickup truck. Is this something for you? There's always going to be a Chickarone way wherever you go. As we learned, there's only one way, it's Chickarone way. In addition, I know you're retiring to South Jersey, but should you return to visit Chatham Township in the future at Geralda Farms, we also have a bench that will be there in your honor as well. We can come back, take a break, read your book, and enjoy one of the many things that you've helped contribute to this town, that open space over at Geralda Farms. So
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Can I put this on the trail?
Now you're sure about the picture?
Well, I'd like to just say a word too, if we may, before we go down. Just say, Tom is very humble to deflect the credit to all the volunteers who really have served Chatham Township so well over the years, but the common denominator down through now almost 2 decades has been yourself, and I hope that you do come back often, and I hope when you drive through town that you do feel a real feeling of satisfaction, because I don't think there have been really anybody that's had the role that you've had in making Chatham Township what it is today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. And you are now officially forgiven for the nasty editorial that you wrote about 10 or 12 years ago.
My interaction with Tom dates back to when I was at the newspaper. And he's never let me forget a few of the editorials that date back to that time.
And mine does too. So, Tom, I want to say thank you to you, because in my 11 years as writing for the newspaper, it was always a pleasure to talk to Tom. I could talk to him about what was going on. He would give me the answers. We could talk about things before we went to print. And I hope I did that job well. And I know one time he caught me on something where I wrote it wrong, and I caught, how do you say this? heck for it.
No, you caught the Chickarron way.
I caught the Chickarone way. But that was once in 11 years, so that wasn't so bad. But I wish you all the best on your retirement. You and Mary Beth, and hello to Shay. Our kids went to school together.
Manning.
Oh, that's Manning? I was wondering why you look different. But then, you know, kids grow up so quickly nowadays that, but our children went to school together, so I wish you guys all the best.
Well, I would be remiss if I don't chime in, because I traditionally do. Tom, as a taxpayer in this community for nearly 30 years, I know that we as a community overall owe you an awful lot for your fiscal discipline and financial guidance to the township committees that have preceded us. Thoughtful administration, a very careful eye towards spending, and that's something that we hope that we will be able to continue. I'm grateful for one, you know, we all like to try and play things close to the vest when it comes to other people's money, and you've really been a great shepherd in that regard. Your sense of humor is always disarming. I find it most entertaining. I love the old Darth Vader reference, but you aren't that way at all. When we said goodbye to Kevin Sullivan a number of weeks ago, I was proud to use the term in perpetuity for some of the things that he accomplished in his short tenure here on Chatham Township Committee as mayor, as deputy mayor. When we look at all that has been done in perpetuity going forward, that you have guided us through as a community, particularly the open space, the open space acquisitions that we've made under your guidance. It's truly amazing how great a town it is because of so many different ways that you've contributed. So personally and on behalf of everybody here, we represent them all, and we thank you from the bottom of our heart. You've been great to work with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Giralda Farms property is one in particular that, you know, I will treasure. That when I first came here, I don't know how many people remember, but that property was slated for development of 750,000 square feet of office space. The owners had been actually paying the township a substantial sum of money every year to reserve sewage capacity for that ultimate development. And, you know, when the opportunity came up that it went on the market, you know, I made a couple of phone calls, and then the team took over and made it happen. So I'm particularly proud of that one. I think
well, you have every right to be. The magnitude of that project, the amount of money that went into it, the number of moving parts from one end of the state to the other, from, you know, across township lines and everything else, was truly an amazing feat.
Thank you.
Excellent. Now, last 15 minutes, the expectations are set for Bob Hoffman. So no pressure. And
Bob just has to not screw it up, that's all.
okay, so we wanted to have a picture, but you are
No,
not
I really
wanting
don't
it,
see
so-
much point in it. These guys will be
Okay,
taking
sure,
pictures.
sure.
We're going to have breakfast with Bob
Sure.
Monday morning. Maybe we can do some kind of informal shots there.
Okay.
Okay?
So we're going to move on to the reports, what's on the agenda. And the reports, Kurt, anything from you?
No reports.
No reports. Karen, anything?
Yes, terrific. First of all, when it comes to my correspondence with our local utility companies, we do have representatives from PSE&G here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, so I'll leave the floor to you. Earlier this week, we had the privilege of meeting with representatives from New Jersey American Water, who have come out to talk to us about their plans for replacing the water main underneath Parkview Terrace. Parkview Road? I think it's Parkview Terrace. In any case, it serves 14 residences. They are always reluctant to do any road opening and other large projects like this during the winter months, but there have been 14 breaches in this particular water main in the most recent past, and it's just something that's got to be done. We get into some serious, potentially water problems during the freezing months. So they're going to do that. They expect the work will begin on February 4th. They'll begin by digging the trench. They're going to replace the water main with a new one and restore service to 14 residences. We will stay in touch with them on a regular basis. They've been great about this in the large projects that they've done over the last several years. They keep us posted on a weekly basis of their projects. They work hand in glove with our Department of Public Works, which is great. I know Rich will be on top of that, also with our police force. So to ensure that our residents don't compromise their safety as they attempt to get in and out of their homes. And so that will begin on February 4th. If there's any questions, obviously, you can refer them to Township officials. John Rushke will be on top of the project. I'm always at your disposal when it comes to relating to New Jersey American Water. Speaking of DPW, we would just like to thank you for all you've done over the last several, incoming weather events. We're looking for freezing temperatures now on top of an inch or two of rain from today. So the township's strongest is ready for everything. They treat us great and they keep our safety as their number one priority. So thank you for that. On a business front, we are going to be, there's been a lot made of summer camps over the last several years here in Chatham Township. There's going to be a summer camp fair coming up on March 24th. It's being sponsored by the Madison Chamber of Commerce. They're going to put out more information, but you can look to madisonnjchamber.org. There will be announcements coming forth, not only for parents interested in exploring summer camp opportunities for their kids, but also for those who are ambitious and entrepreneurial enough to want to start a summer camp of their own. There is, during this exhibition on March 24th, which will be obviously open to the public, there will be opportunities to act as sponsor, to act as exhibitor, etc. So that will be coming forth and you can look for word not only on the website, but also in the news. So I've been in touch with the Director of Chamber of Commerce for Madison, which is sponsoring it. And that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Tracy, anything?
Yes, the communications. Our communications committee has met. We've reformed the communications committee. We're working to update our website, the township, the Colony Pool website. We've met with Chief Miller to go over his communication needs for the department and their website needs, so we're working on that. Colony Pool, the committee is back up and running. We have members who are looking forward to revitalizing programs and services offered at Colony. We're looking at tennis programs, summer camp ideas, yoga, water aerobics, and more, so stay tuned on that. In fact, they're meeting again tonight. The Environmental Commission has met. They had a very full meeting, including plans for a spring work day on April 6th in conjunction with Earth Day, planning for another successful seedling giveaway on April 27th. The Board of Education, we've reached out to the Board of Education. We used to do something a long time ago where we would recognize students who had achieved, whether it was a sports team or robotics or music and theater, and we used to invite them to the township and recognize them for their level of achievement. I reached out to Dr. LaSousa, and he was excited about doing that again, so we're looking to do that. And the Rolling Knolls landfill, the January meeting had to be postponed due to the government shutdown, but we're expected to meet again sometime in February or hopefully even sooner. But that a proposal for recommendation for remediation will be coming in late February. And that's what I have.
Thank you, Tracy. Mike, anything?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I'd like to report that the Chatham Community Garden is looking ahead to the spring, and they have a number of available garden plots. They are sending out final reminders to last year's gardeners to send in their payment for the coming year, but as of now, there are a number of available garden plots, so if people are interested, whether you live in an apartment or just in a house that has a lot of shade and you can't have a garden in your own property and would like to try your hand at it, please go to the township website, and all the information about sending in an application for one of those garden plots at the Chatham Community Garden is spelled out in detail on the website. So thank you very much, Mayor. That's it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Appreciate it. And I have one quick thing as far as reports. And we are part of this Mayor's Wellness Committee, and many other towns are as well. And I have a message that I will just read quickly. And I read more things than I read in my entire elementary school today. So, the Mayor's Wellness Advisory Committee of the Chathams reminds us that February is American Heart Month, and Friday, February 1st, is Wear Red Day to raise awareness about cardiovascular disease. The American Heart Association is the nation's oldest and largest volunteer voluntary health organization. Its purpose is to help prevent America's #1 and #4 killers, heart disease and stroke. Cardiovascular health is a priority for our community, and the Mayor's Wellness Advisory Committee invites all citizens to increase their awareness of cardiovascular risk factors, develop positive behaviors, nutritious eating habits, and healthy lifestyles. And this is the message, and I want to thank Janice Piccolo and Tom Salvas for being part of this, and I want to thank also Kurt Ritter for being the liaison with the Wellness Committee. So that's all I have.
Great. I have one more thing that I would like to point out. Last time we met during our Township Committee reorganization meeting, there was a lot of discussion that centered around Resolution 2019-005, which were mayoral appointments, which were voted upon by the Township Committee. And I do understand the nature of mayoral appointments, and that is that they are just that the mayor is entitled to do it. We have an extensive list. They were volunteers that were negotiated with well in advance of the presentation of 2019-005. There were a lot of ideological discrepancies, I would like to say. I included was disappointed. The minutes from last meeting will reflect that I was dismayed about former members not having been reappointed. But the idea that it was all done in public was going to be enough for us, and there it was, 2019-005, with all of the new incoming appointees, with the strange exception of a 3-year appointment by the Deputy Mayor's wife, Maureen Kelly, to the Environmental Commission. As the liaison to the Environmental Commission last year, I noted with interest that her name was not on the list of reappointments in Resolution 2019-005, and I thought it a little odd, but then I thought maybe it was appropriate that the wife of the Deputy Mayor was not going to be serving on the Environmental Commission any longer, until I visited the Environmental Commission website and noticed that her name somehow appeared there with an appointment expiring in 2021. So whereas everyone else and their mayoral appointments was subject to heightened scrutiny and even debate here in the public before all of us, somehow or other her name skipped the list that we actually voted on. I thought that was a little bit surprising for a group that prides itself on transparency left and right. We are constantly defending ourselves when it comes to the accusations of surreptitious business or obfuscation of the public in any way. And I just found it quite ironic that I would go to a website and found that a mayoral appointment had been made while it didn't come out in the light of day where everyone else did. So I'm just going to leave that out there, and that's all I have to say. I'm not expecting any kind of reply on that matter. Thank you.
Okay.
If that's the case, don't we have to update the resolution or pass a resolution?
Can I, Mayor, can
Yes,
I reply?
please.
There has been no clandestine action, and if Karen, if you had given me a call, I could have explained this to you, but I'll be happy to explain it. My wife has served on the Environmental Commission. Knowing that there was some concern about appointments at the reorganization meeting, I took the initiative to remove her name from the resolutions that were adopted at the reorganization meeting in an attempt to avoid that kind of a family complication. The intent is that her name will be reappointed, will be put forward to be voted on, to be reappointed to that board. I know that there are a number of discrepancies on a number of boards and commissions right now. A number of them have only had their reorganization very recently. I go through the list on the website and I see a number of obsolete titles and names right now. I think the Communications Committee is working with a number of these separate boards and commissions to update their information. I regret that there is something that's not totally up to date.
It was up to date. It shows her term expires in 2021. So her appointment was made and the website was updated. We just didn't have a chance to notice that this appointment was being made. As I said, I don't expect a reply. I'm just going to leave that out there. When it comes to transparency, when it comes to the threat of obfuscation that this board has had to endure, the fact that we've done it to ourselves is extremely disappointing to me. And I'm personally disappointed that we actually partook in something like that. The end.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So without getting into the names, and I just want to add one thing, that I really want to thank all the volunteers for everything they've done for this town. All the volunteers, because it's a volunteer work, and it's not a paid work. It's a volunteer work. People are volunteering their time and taking their times from their families, from their works, and they're volunteering. And this is why Chatham Township is one of the safest towns in the country. This is why Chatham Township schools are top schools. This is why Chatham Township is best place to live and raise a kid and enjoy the life. So that is because all of our volunteers, and I want to thank them as their mayor today for what they have done and what they are doing for us. And if there will be more opportunities, it will be more opportunities for all of our who would like to be volunteer and do work, and there will be positions for them. So,
From a procedural basis, do we address Mr. Ritter's concern then, Albert?
As you correctly pointed out when you spoke, under NJSA 40:56 capital A-1, appointments to the Environmental Commission are appointments of the mayor. I don't know if the mayor has made that appointment, but it is a mayoral appointment.
Does that mean it should be part of the public record? Does that mean we should have it on a resolution the way we presented Resolution 2019-005 at our reorg?
That has been the custom, but it's not necessary. It is appropriate to make an announcement at the appropriate time, but it is a mayoral appointment, not subject to Township Committee review.
Thank you very much. Albert?
so I would like to move on with our agenda. We're halfway through. It's 8:30. Let's move on. And when we finish reports now, we have been receiving some complaints from our residents regarding one of our utility companies' work in their right-of-way. And now, next item on the agenda is we invited here, and thanks to Karen Swartz and her work and being a liaison with the utility company for the township, and we have been able to get PSCNG here, and I have Everton Scott from PSCNG and his colleague are here, and they will give us some backgrounds and what happened and why it happened and what made our residents dissatisfied, and what are the next steps to remedy. And Everton, please take it away and explain us and talk to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, members of the governing body, especially Ms. Karen Schwartz and Mr. Mike Kelly, who came out to meet with us last Wednesday. And by the way, before I go on, Tom, I want to wish you the best. I've been doing this job now for about 27 years. Made me feel old, but I've been doing it. And I remember in 2000 when you came in, at that time I was a Jersey Central employee. And I worked there for 17 years, moved over to PSCG in 2008, and we continued working together. And I really thank you for the cordial relationship that we developed, and wish you all the best for the future. Mr. Mayor, so we at PSCG, we take the relationship that we cultivate with municipalities extremely seriously, very seriously. Before we would come into a municipality and do any work, it would have been normal for us to have first reach out, in this case, to the liaison, explain to her what we're doing and why we're doing it. In this case, that didn't happen, and it's on us. Having said that, PSCG is kind of caught in the middle. On one end, we have the residents that would complain bitterly for lack of reliability. And we do feed into some Jersey Central substations, with the transmission lines that we have going through Chatham. On the other hand, we have federal regulation. This is not governed by the state, not governed by a municipality. It goes to the federal government, and the federal government has given us certain stipulations that we must adhere by. So as a utility, we're kind of caught in the middle. In fact, I do have with me tonight Mr. Rich Arnold, and Rich has the responsibility for all the transmission right-of-way work that we do, not only in Chatham Township, but all across the state. And so what I'll do is I'll ask Rich to come up, explain to you what we did, kind of why it was done, and after that, we'll be open to questions.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Richard Arnold. I'm the PSE&G Transmission Vegetation Manager. As Everton had spoke, it is my responsibility to implement PSE&G's vegetation management program across our transmission system. Probably the best thing for me to do at first is just to kind of explain what our program or what our program, well, actually what our program is. We're required under both, as Everton spoke, the federal and state guidelines. We're mandated as a transmission owner under the federal FAC 003-4 regulations to manage, well, in short, to inspect 100% of our lines on an annual basis and to have a vegetation management plan that manages the vegetation within the engineered width of our right-of-ways, and to address any concerns. We're to manage that in a manner that prevents or that will ensure that there are no outages or vegetation encroachments into minimum vegetation clearance distances of the lines. The managed vegetation width, or the engineered width on the transmission line that's 230,000 volts, such as the line that goes through Chatham Township where this work has been done, is 230,000. That is 75 feet from center line or 150 foot right away. We are to manage out to that full extent or to the full extent of our fee-owned property rights or our easement rights. In this case, in Chatham Township, we own the property and fee. The trees that were there, and I can't speak for historically why they were left. I've been with PSE&G for about 6 years. But I believe in the past what prior vegetation managers tried to do was to try to strike a balance between meeting our obligations of not having an outage and to not have complaints from the property owners, and understandably so. However, we do have the regulatory requirements. The transmission systems are considered a part of national security. The fines, for instance, if there were an outage, or even not an outage, just a incursion into minimum vegetation clearance distance, the federal fine started at $1 million per event. The federal regulations don't dictate exactly how we are to manage the right-of-ways. It's up to the individual transmission owners. The state regulatory BPU, NJAC 14.5-9, dictates how utilities within the state of New Jersey are to manage their rights-of-way, both distribution and transmission. In this case, this is transmission. And they require that in the wire zone, which is the distance from the outermost conductors inward, no vegetation that exceeds 3 feet in height, no woody vegetation that can exceed 3 feet in height at its maturity is allowed. And in the border zone, and in this case in Chatham Township, there were no issues there, that was all grass. In the border zones, we're to implement IVM. IVM is integrated vegetation management. It's an industry standard, an ANSI A300 Part 7 standard that requires or that manages how a work plan is developed. And in that case, we look at site-specific conditions, and we determine what kind of vegetation can be allowed. So basically what it comes to is we look at how tall the wires are, what the individual species of tree is, and how tall will it grow during at its maturity. If at its maturity it will not interfere with the minimum vegetation clearances of the utility line or the transmission line, then it's considered compatible, and we have no reason to do any work with it. Even if it's a small tree, but juvenile tree, at its maturity, it has the potential to encroach into those minimum vegetation clearance distances, then that tree is incompatible and it's subject to removal. And that is the case of what happened up here. The trees, if these were amelanchiers or dogwoods, redbuds, things of that sort, they wouldn't have been left. But for the most part, these trees were ash, oak, maple, other tall growers, and those are the trees that were removed. So it is part of our plan, excuse me, our program, to notice property owners. In this case, PSC&G is the property owner. As a courtesy, we notify adjacent property owners. Our line clearance contractors are to do that, or they're charged to do that. And also, we notice towns, which we did for Chatham Township with our general notifications. But when it comes to something that's a little bit more high profile like this, it is our process or our procedure to go ahead and make another notice, which would have happened with you. I found I was able, once this was brought to my attention, I was able to see where the hiccup was, just not trying to put it mildly, but where it happened, and it won't happen in the future. So with that, I guess probably the best thing for me is just be able to answer any questions that people would have.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, guys. And now, Everton, you're good? So any other comments from you guys?
No.
Okay.
I think it's covered.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this now to the public to make specific comments regarding PSC&G work. And we're going to have an opportunity.
Committee ask questions first?
Of course. And then after committee discusses, then I'm going to open to the public, just specifically for this matter. And then public will have opportunity for other things in a few more minutes. So now let's, committee members, any discussions?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. So are you saying that the work that was done this past month, 2 months, whatever the case might be, is it catch up to stuff that has not been done previously?
It was, the right-of-ways they have been since mid-2005 or 2007, 2008, in that time frame. The federal regulations were in, or the first version of them were implemented. Our utility, as well as several other utilities, I used to work on the first energy system prior, were reluctant at that time to fully go out to the full widths because they weren't sure what the state BPU, because the BPU regulations came out in 2007, and they didn't want to get caught in the middle while there was some uncertainty. PSC&G apparently during that time, I wasn't with them, but apparently took the same thought. Around 2010, when the state BPU regulations were updated, when the BPU regulations were updated, PSC&G decided that they were going to go ahead and, not to say recapture, but to go ahead and make sure that we're in full compliance as we go through on regular maintenance. I came to PS in 2013, and from that point, with every year that we have been doing maintenance, we've been trying to identify those areas that were not managed out to the full width. Even in 2014, when the project went through to replace the towers in this section, I was a supervisor at the time, but I wasn't aware that we actually owned additional property. Otherwise, at that time, it would have been addressed. So, this has been our second session, or second maintenance cycle was in 2017, 2018. That's when we identified these areas that we actually had additional right-of-way, and we needed to go ahead and clear out to that full extent. So that is what the reason this happened. The timing of the work, Indiana bat is a federal T&E species. This Chatham Township and this whole, pretty much most of North Jersey is within that restricted area. We can only do work in those areas between October 1st and March 31st. So that's why the work was done during that period of time, not during the summer. Otherwise, we probably would have been working on it through the summer as well.
Do you know how many trees you guys cut down?
I do not know.
And in terms of the trees that have been cut down, is it your responsibility as well to remove stumps, logs, everything else, or is that?
It is our responsibility to remove the debris, the resultant debris, so that the logs, the brush, the stumps, if they're in a maintained area, a grass area, then we would grind the stumps and turn that area to turf as a surrounding. In this area, there are several stumps that property owners have. Their yard actually came onto our property. We are going to grind those stumps. It doesn't hurt us that people are cutting grass out onto our property. So we're going to grind those stumps and put those areas to turf.
Do you have a time frame for the disposal of all the wood and grinding of the stumps for folks?
The bulk of the wood has been removed to this point. Once soon as April comes around, we are going to go ahead and have our contractor go out and do a final York rake of the area, get up any debris that still is remaining, and then they are going to go ahead and augment the natural seed bank with wildflower mix, other herbaceous mix seeds, so we can try to get a flush of vegetation as soon as possible.
And then the last one is, as it relates to just now the created eyesore for residents of the area, is there any restrictions or advice or suggestions in terms of what trees they can plant or how close they can plant it to the property line, as it were?
On their property or on their property line, we have no authority. They can do whatever they like. Understanding that on the south side of the right-of-way, there is a Jersey Central 34,000 volt line that runs. They do have easement that extends onto their easement is from the edge of our property line into the, actually part of our property, and then into the adjacent property owners. So they would have to consult with them as far as interfering with that line. But other than that, since we own that property in fee, if they want to do something on their property, they're certainly welcome to do so.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Arnold, thank you. Everton, thank you so much for making the trip out, for abiding with us while we had other township business to take care of. There have been questions asked along the lines of having groups come out, volunteer groups come out, maybe work on their own ideas of beautification. Obviously, being that this is federally regulated property, that it's PSE&G property, we would not want to encourage any civilians, so to speak, to be out there in the right-of-way doing anything of the sort, leaving it all up to you folks. As I said when we were talking about New Jersey American Water and our great communications, when you come back in the spring, I'm sure you will give us abundant notice that you'll be back. And certainly the homeowners who need to know that you're going to be there working on property that's adjacent to theirs, they'll be notified.
Certainly.
As far as the black silk fence that's going up and down the runway, the right-of-way there, that will be removed. That's just kind of unsightly.
That has nothing to do with us. That's
Okay.
AT&T is
Okay.
doing cell tower work on one of our towers,
Mhm.
and unfortunately, our work happened to be in that same area, so that adds to it. However, the silt fence and all the construction around that tower is unrelated to PSC&G.
Okay, terrific. Well, we'll take it up with them then. Thank you so much. Thanks once again.
Any other comments from the committee members?
Just a quick question. I mean, thank you for the walking explanation that you gave the other day. But the status of the project, we're talking about the right-of-way where it crosses Fairmount Avenue and Sunset, that area, just where it's unfortunately very high visibility. Is this the end of the project? Should we expect to see it extend in the next, going down the right-of-way any further?
In that area, the restoration, as I spoke of before, once the weather clears in the spring, as early in the spring as possible, it's sometime in the April timeframe, we'll be doing the restoration work. Okay. As far as tree removals in those areas, the tree removals are complete. There may be, once you get down by the Great Swamp, there's certain areas down there that have some trees, but I don't believe there's any houses that abut that, and in the past, they've been topped. Those trees, once the permit is through, they will be removed, but I believe that they're beyond any of the houses.
And then
but by the time we do that, I will notice you once I have better understanding of which trees they are.
Thank you.
We have been asked about stormwater runoff as you go down that slope. Obviously, up the slope is where we saw you remove a lot of trees. As you're heading west, if you will, from Fairmount down where Stonewick goes, where Pembroke goes. I know this is a matter that John Rushkey comes into contact with a lot when it comes to stormwater management in that area. And we spoke with that. I think, Mr. Scott, you and I spoke about that this afternoon on the phone. Was a matter of whether any of the work that you have done in the last several weeks, whether we believe that has contributed to it, or John, maybe you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, I have a few
Okay.
questions. If the
Great,
committee wants
okay,
to go
great.
first, and then I'll
Go ahead. Okay. In that, any grade changes or any kind of excavation work that's been done in that area, again, is done for that AT&T construction project. Apart from that, we are not doing anything as far as changing the grade. So the natural flow of water will be in the way that it was in the past. Obviously, the trees are going to be gone. It's not going to be devegetated. I mean, obviously, it's winter. So that it's brown. I mean, that's winter.
Okay.
But that will, in the springtime, there's a natural seed bank in the ground. That will come up. And again, as I said before, we will augment that with a wildflower and other suitable seed mix.
The other thing too, Karen, when I was out there, and this is one of the things I was looking for, I've been on the Morris County Planning Board now for 19
Right,
years.
you mentioned
I
that.
walk around and I look for these
Yeah.
things. There's a storm drain on Fairmount Avenue to which any water that runs off our property would drain into. So, no, I mean, I don't see that has been a problem, but, I mean, again, we're willing to look at anything, and if there's something that we can do to address it, we will.
That's where the right-of-way comes down the hill and onto Fairmount, so
Yeah.
that's a catch basin right there.
Correct. I was actually, if it means anything, we did get quite a bit of rain today. And this afternoon, I came up from South Plainfield. I was a little early. It wasn't quite dark yet, so I actually went through the area to see how the area fared after the
Right.
heavy rains we had. There was no dirt, debris, or anything whatsoever out in the roads. The water was flowing into the catch basin. Actually, one of the bales of hay that's around on Fairmount by that one catch basin, we hadn't put them there. That was put by AT&T. It actually seemed to be blocking some of the water from going in the basin, and there's a puddle forming out into the road. I moved that while I was there, and so everything just went down. But again, I didn't see any evidence of any mud or dirty water on the streets.
Great, thank you.
Tracy, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just had a question about the further projects. When we talked about what's happened now, and then about the area that leads into the Great Swamp, that access road where those two sets of power lines go there. Is that your property, and will you be doing the removal of trees along that section as well?
On the section where, from where the line that comes across Fairmount, it meets up with the other transmission line, is the section where they're together is where you're speaking of?
Yeah.
That goes out to where the old gazebo used to be.
Yes.
Yes. We have, right now, as far as for the RPV project, there are no tree removals necessary for their project. I've been giving nothing from any of my people that indicate that there are any tree removals out on that right of way whatsoever in Township.
So this is it?
Of large trees. I mean, it's not that you're never going to see us again. We're going to be out, we're going to trim trees, and if anything grows up, we're going to be removing that. But at this point, I know of no other tree removals, especially to this magnitude within the township.
And the gravel that was placed on the upside, that's going to be an access road?
That gravel that comes off of Fairmount,
Yes.
that was put there for AT&T. I'm assuming that they're going to be removing that. That's inside of that silt fence, which is now a limited disturbance. And
Does
I
anybody
believe
know?
they're supposed to remove
This
that.
is not a question for you, but a question for the committee or for John.
That is a construction entrance at the moment while they do their work. Ultimately, that will be removed, and they are going to construct a concrete slab there for basically a pullout for their workers to pull off a Fairmount and to go walk up to the station. So that will ultimately be a concrete pad there as a driveway.
So we will have a driveway going up.
No, it's just enough for, I don't recall the exact length, but it's enough for a vehicle to get off the road.
And were we noticed of the AT&T work as well?
Correct. That was a Board of Adjustment meeting, a Board of Adjustment application, so that was heard through the Board of Adjustment.
Earlier this year?
Correct. It was last year, but there was AT&T was cited as a violation. They disturbed more steep slopes, and they had to actually come back to the board. So they were just back to the board last month.
So there'll be remediation work done by AT&T in that area to correct what was not done correctly.
Correctly, yes, yes.
And then this just happened on top of that at the same time that the work was going on.
Yes.
So perhaps you can do a better job of coordination for our residents so that it all just doesn't happen at once. I know that's probably not an easy thing to do amongst the utilities when everybody's scheduling these things on their own. And if you could just go over again, just so I could understand, what exactly is the type of restoration? How far out will it go? Will it go, just to the edges on this one section that you talked about as being kind of an area where certain trees can grow, but, a cherry tree or something like that? Or is it just all going to be ground cover, wildflowers, meadows? What will it look like?
Yes, the meadow look. That's what we're not looking to plant any woody vegetation on the right-of-way. Wherever we have disturbed ground with the equipment, those are the areas where the trees were removed. We will also be in that area too, putting some seed in as well. So I hope the expectation is as we move forward, it's going to be back into a low-grow shrub community. With some meadow grasses perhaps, but whatever the ground, whatever compatible vegetation that's in the natural seed bank comes up, will allow it to grow there. If any saplings from these maples or any other trees that happen to come up, we will be removing them in future maintenance cycles. But it won't be when the trees are 20 inches in diameter, it'll be when they're 2 or 3 inches in diameter.
So it's all going to be flat, so 3 feet in that area?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. And there's no opportunity to put anything higher than that for screening purposes?
As a policy, PSC&G, when we do our regular routine maintenance work, this is part of maintenance of our transmission line. We don't replace trees for the trees that have to be removed to maintain the line. We restore the ground so that there aren't, to minimize the impact and make a better visual. But as far as replanting trees, we don't, as a policy, do that.
But like as Rich pointed out before, if any of the properties that are impacted along that right-of-way, if the property owners want to plant properties on their property, again, there'd have to be set back for the Jersey Central easement that Jersey Central has. But if they want to, then they can certainly go ahead and do that.
You're saying that property owners can do anything what they would like to do in their property?
Correct.
So that doesn't need PSC&G's, I think, statement. So anybody can do anything in their own property, right? So I thank you for, So I have two quick questions. And one is, now when AT&T work is mentioned, and AT&T is putting antennas and a shelter on your property.
Correct.
The property is owned by you.
Correct.
So you collect rent from them.
I don't know. That's not part of vegetation management.
Okay, that's fine.
So I have no knowledge of that.
So what I wanted to get at is that AT&T is responsible to you to make sure they do the right thing in your property, right? Because when property is selected, I'm sure PSC&G representative and AT&T representative and an architect and engineer, they all meet. Hey, this is what you can do. You need to make sure you cannot do this, and they present set of drawings to PSC&G. So you approve them. Is that correct process?
AT&T would have to work with our what's the word? Our transportation engineering, and corporate properties to do whatever AT&T wants to do. And so this goes a little bit higher. It's a function of the federal government standards, which basically says that, in a manner of speaking, you will allow them to coexist on your facilities. But to answer your question, yes, AT&T would have had to come to us. They would have had to enter into some kind of contractual agreement with AT&T for them to coexist on our towers.
Yeah. My point is this, though. It's not. AT&T is responsible to you, and you are responsible to us as a public, right? So we come to you, we don't go to AT&T. We don't need to get AT&T here because this is your property, and our residents are having issues because of the work is being done in your property. So you are responsible, and good, bad, in between, anything. So it's your property, and you will come up with solutions if you need to come up with solutions, and we'll discuss all that tonight a little bit further. Okay, so I just wanted to make that point. So, any other committee discussions before I go to John? Then we'll go to public after that. So, anyone else here? No? Okay, John, you want to make comment?
Within the right-of-way, clearly there's drainage, ditches, swales, however you want to characterize them, that's controlling stormwater along the right-of-way. Does PSE&G have a program for maintaining those drainage structures?
If they're within and it's not part of my department, our transmission, construction, and maintenance maintains drainage or anything that we've installed within our rights of way. As far as it's in a public right of way or on a road, that's beyond my understanding.
Because clearly, near Pembroke, there's clearly evidence that there's a drainage swale, and both of them look like they've been neglected for years. And in fact, there was so much sedimentation in that location that the roads got flooded. And so, understand you're with a certain department, and that may be something else. But certainly, we would like to have the contact person of who at PSE&G is responsible for looking at those drainage. Because we are seeing sedimentation, and that does, impact stormwater, not only in the right-of-way, but to the adjoining properties. Because if that's not being swelled, not being maintained, the swales are being, inundated, and you get stormwater discharging off of private property. So it is a concern that needs to be addressed.
You can, and this is open to anybody, the public, or contact me, and if it's not part of something that I have any control over, I know who controls pretty much everything. I can figure out who it is and pass that along. Yeah, it's obviously everything good.
Yeah, because we tried to reach out, and we tried to coordinate some improvements on Pembroke, and it wasn't happening. So we need a contact person that we can coordinate.
Yeah, Ms. Schwartz has my card.
And she has my information too. So, we can get you in touch with the correct person.
Absolutely.
Okay. And regarding trimming versus clearing, and I know that when you're trimming, you're generally not disturbing soils, and when you're clearing, you're not changing the grades, but you are disturbing the soils, and it is a land disturbance. Can you tell me what is that threshold before you in fact need to get a soil erosion sediment control permit when you're doing your clearing activities?
Well, I mean, in terms of a threshold, Rich can speak to that, but if you think about what we're doing, we're going onto the property, we're cutting the trees, and sometimes we grind the stump, sometimes we don't. We're not doing anything to increase impervious coverage. We're not increasing the velocity of runoff or anything. I mean, so I don't think, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that we've ever gone for a soil erosion permit just for tree removal.
Not for tree removals, for restoration areas, and it's, I believe, the threshold, if I'm not mistaken, it's 5,000 contiguous square feet.
It is, and you have certainly definition of what you're permitted to do under the federal regulations, and under the state regulations, it has a definition of land disturbance. And you're right, if you exceed more than 5,000 square feet, you have to get a soil erosion sediment control permit. And I know that when you did the major renovations and the new poles, you obviously got a soil erosion sediment control permit for that. But some of the activities that I'm seeing out there, seems like you're at that threshold. It seems like you should be getting a permit for some of these activities.
On this property and the work that was done on Fairmont on going up to what's the name of the street now? Sunset. You got to remember that what you're seeing right there by Fairmont is to a large part AT&T's work, and AT&T disturbing soil. That really wasn't us. So, I mean, you can speak to that a little bit more, because again, all we're doing is cutting down trees and cutting them up on the window.
And I'm very familiar with AT&T because Chatham is a designated municipality where we issue soil erosion. We act as the state in that capacity. And I did issue the permit for them for soil erosion. And I know their limits, and it just seems like your limits are close to being that threshold. And I just, is that on your, are you thinking of that when you're scheduling this work, and that is a requirement. When you disturb more than 5,000 square feet, you do have to get a permit. And if you're removing stumps, and even though you're not, land disturbance is not just grading, it's disturbing of the soil. So if you're removing a stump, you're disturbing that soil around that stump. And so it's not just grading, it's clearing.
Well, the stumps that we're going to be removing, there's probably 3 on that one property.
Understood.
And
It looks like you were pushing the threshold, and I just want to point that out, that, I didn't reach out to you and do that, just so you're at that threshold, but that certainly needs to be a sensitivity in the future, that, if you're going to exceed that 5,000 square feet, you are required to get a permit. I don't see any exemption on that.
We are aware of that. We have an extensive environmental program. It's actually, to be honest with you, I'm involved with the transmission forum that entails utilities from the East Coast all the way out to California, down to Florida. I've heard no environmental program yet in the 5 or 6 years that I've been involved with it that even comes close to comparing with what we do. So yes, we are aware of that, and we look at all the T&E species, and we actually end up spending a lot of money on environmental, and as well as our working around the T&E species and working with the DEP. We have a very good relationship with the DEP, primarily because of how much emphasis that we put on that. So we are sensitive to that, and again, if we're outside those thresholds, I don't believe so. You're probably more an expert in that than I am.
And the other thing to note here is that as a company, and I'm, again, and you've been working with PSCG for a while, we run our company in total compliance with local laws. I mean, sometimes we go above and beyond just to make sure that we're in compliance. That's the way we operate our company. So we really, I hear what you're saying, but just believe me that we really don't look to cut corners. If he had to go get a permit for land disturbance, it would have been.
I'm not implying this. You're very close. You go out and measure it or anything, but you
Okay,
could
next.
exceed that. Thanks, Tom. The other, check your own way. The other issue I'm going to bring up is just.
Can you bring it up after the meeting out in the hallway, or give them a call tomorrow?
All right, Tom, I'll bring it up.
All right, so,
Actually, I'd like to hear it, especially since our residents are here to
Yeah, but I don't really think that it's appropriate and fair to be treating these gentlemen the way that we are.
okay. Real quick, just wrap it up if you can.
No,
Just real quick.
it's regarding, it's a long issue. It's going to require some discussion, so we can bring it up separately. It's just regarding, the clearing, impacts of the general surface water and groundwater recharge, and just a discussion I think we need to have. And maybe it's a separate meeting with them, because it may go.
Let's schedule that meeting after this call, so please, and let us know when it's scheduled, so I want to let residents know. All right, now I think it's time to open to public, and this section, it's going to be public only for this matter, again. And please come up to the microphone.
Mayor, if I may
Sure.
make a suggestion, to deviate from the agenda a little bit and go ahead and just jump into the hearing of citizens, and then I'll do the budget presentation when that's done. That way, you don't have to have 2 different sessions. Let's let the public do their thing. They can then go home if they want to.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, so please introduce yourself and your address.
Hi, I'm Stacy Ewald. I'm on Nicholson Drive. I've been there for 20 years. I've never seen a clear-cutting operation the way, in terms of what's been done in that right-of-way. In the past, they have lowered the vegetation to, a foot, and you didn't have to worry about the integrity of that hill. From Nicholson down to Fairmount, it's a mudslide. And they did put bales of hay along Sunset and then along Fairmount. Fairmount, they're sticking out in the street. But there was mud that was coming down, that was pouring down. So I want to make sure that if they're planting to protect those hills, that somebody's monitoring for that we're making sure that the integrity of the hills is maintained. The other thing, in terms of the trees, pictures, I'm happy to share them with everybody. There were large oaks that were removed, large healthy oaks and other trees that were removed. And I know for residents, I've had people tell me when they've removed trees on their private property that they've had to replace it with another tree. So I understand there'll be vegetation, but I'm wondering if PSG has an obligation if we need trees elsewhere in the town, whether it's at Colony, additional shade trees, or somewhere else, if they can't, because they removed a lot of good, healthy trees, and if private residents are responsible to replace trees with, other trees, I'm wondering if the utility needs to do the same.
Thank you, Stacy. Please.
Hi, my name is Christina Mott, and I also live on Nicholson Drive. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize that the conversation we're having here, I think maybe undersells a little bit the size of the trees that were cut down. And, walking along Sunset, the pile of logs was well above my head, was almost the entire right-of-way. It was a huge removal, and I really worry about the ability for small vegetation to hold up that hillside for any extended period of time. And I just hope that this is going to be held to high scrutiny so that we don't end up having a lot of problems along that way. And again, I think, the little bit of straw on Fairmount at the bottom of that today, I mean, there was a huge puddle that, was kind of halfway into the road, and it's, it is a problem. It's, it's not just people kind of getting annoyed we weren't notified. So I just hope that you'll take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Rich Bandico. I live on Stonewick Drive, been a resident of Chatham Township since 2012. Thank you very much for coming tonight. You're under a lot of pressure here from the folks, and we have a real reason to be upset, I think. I live on Stonewick below Fairmount, and I'm getting a lot of stormwater in my backyard that never showed up before, to this gentleman's point about the swells. The swells are all settling into my backyard and sitting there. And it's been like that for 2-3 months. As well, I don't think you're done removing the trees. If you come to my backyard, you'll see there's trees that you cut the limbs off and left the tree sticking up. And that's just not okay. It's not.
I don't know.
So, I mean, the mayor was at my home on Saturday morning, and he can attest to this. We have pictures of it, you can see. But hopefully you'll reconsider and do some things to remediate for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Axlyn Summer. Unfortunately, I live on Sunset, and I live right by the power lines. And unfortunately also, I've lost 2 sales of my home because of what's been done in the power lines. We've lived there 48 years. We've always been notified when work was being done. There was no notification this time at all. Stormwater, you name it, logs, trees, mud, dirt has been on my yard. It is beyond my belief that this has been done in a proper way. I mean, 4 houses on Sunset that back up to, that are right on the power lines, you've devalued our homes to a degree. We're going to lose a large amount of money. 2 families refused to come and look at my home. And I've got a very beautiful home. And I've put a great deal of money into it. We love our neighborhood. But what you've done to it, it makes no sense. And there's been no compassion. I probably have talked to you guys, because I used to go out every morning. I probably wanted to give you coffee and donuts and bagels and whatever, pleading, please, give me some answers. You cut down beautiful, beautiful trees. Fine, you need to get them cut down to a degree, but to this degree, it's devastating. And we can't grow them back. So I don't know what you want us to do. And quite honestly, I don't know if I'll have any grass on that side because all I get is storm water. It's extremely upsetting. So, I don't know. I've got to have some answers. And I speak for the 3 other families who really did not want to appear. And I'm the mouthpiece, unfortunately. But I need some answers. And before you come out again, you've got to notify us. That was just not right. I mean, you can't appear on that property. I have my easement, and you're literally cutting through my fencing. No, I pay taxes, and I take down a tree, and I have to replace it. Well, come on, guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Charles Phillip, I live on Sunset, and I too have a real problem with the way this was done. This is our neighborhood. These are our property values. This is our right to quiet enjoyment of our homes. I received no notification from PSNG. Nothing. And what was done is not consistent with the way we do things these days. We no longer rip off mountaintops to mine coal. We no longer destroy watersheds for development. We're very careful about wildlife and where they live. This was just showing up and cutting down huge numbers of trees that we've been living with for years in our neighborhood. I've been there for 20 years, and everything has been just fine. And the poles are replaced, and they're even higher now. And there might be some law that says 3 feet, but that's antiquated. That is not today's world. Today's world requires engagement with the community. It requires a balanced approach to how you do things that affect our neighborhood. That was not happening. The damage is now done. You want to see the pictures of the huge number of logs were cut down? You want to see the huge pictures of the streams of water running down the right-of-way? In all due respect, I walk my dogs there every day, and there's been a huge amount of dirt in the street. And there's standing water there now. So this damage has been done. And this has not been a good neighbor approach to how you do things. I know you have jobs to do, and you have federal regulations, but somebody managed to balance those adequately over the years. This seemed arbitrary and capricious the way this was approached. And nobody got a chance to have a conversation about it. So are we going to get any restitution? I mean, right now, it's a mud pit. Is somebody going to regrade that land? Maybe plant something more than just some grass? Right now, it is a huge gap in our neighborhood. It seems much more apparent than it ever was, because there were trees spread around. Trees that the arc of the fall would come nowhere close to these power lines. Just a matter of interest. Are you going to go into the Great Swamp and do the same thing? I mean, that's protected by probably 18 different environmental laws and such. Are you able to go in the Great Swamp and cut things down?
No.
I'm sorry, but I'm
No,
just saying to you.
Charles, please.
Okay, I'm just saying to you that,
Yeah.
okay, this was wrong, okay? And so now the damage is done, and how can we somehow restore our landscape? Just like a big company has to go in and put back the mountaintop, just like they have to clear up the strip mining damage, just like every mining company in the world has to do that now, can our utilities at least have the sensitivity to do the same thing? To replace not just some grass, but some trees, some shrubs, something that gives it an adequate, more pastoral look that's in keeping with this town and the neighbors who live here? That is my question. How are we going to correct this?
Thank you, Charles. Next, please.
Hi, I'm Pat Phillip. I think you had a very good point. I live on Sunset. I think the sensitivity to the people that live there was totally ignored. The debris, the amount of soil displacement from taking down those trees and leaving them there for that long with the debris in the street that I was cleaning up and the rest of my neighbors. My neighbor Axland couldn't get out of her driveway. You know why? The storm drains were this filled with debris and mud. She had 3 feet of water at the end of her driveway. Is there displacement of soil? Absolutely yes. What type of equipment went up those hills? They were enormous. Will you agree with that? I wasn't notified at all. My neighborhood looks awful. Everyone on our street is upset. We have children. This is a blind curve where people have to go around your trucks, go around the sign, hear everything every single morning as early as possible. Nobody cares. What are you going to do about the soil displacement? Because there has to be a ruling as far as that is concerned. You should take a site visit. It's horrible. By the way, the 2 bales of hay on Fairmont created a blocked lane so that you had to go into the other lane and not get hit head on because there was 4 feet of water in the street. There's no gravel up where we are. There's nothing to stop erosion. It keeps coming. Do you have any suggestions as to how that's going to be repaired or replaced?
All right, so we want comments to address us, so we're going to address them.
Okay.
So if you don't mind.
So
I don't wanna
I'm
do-
going to say,
Yeah.
how are you going to replace the soil that has eroded, that's enormous, by taking down so many trees? The trees were as high as, they were 2 stories tall. And they were left there for months. And we obviously know that we had 70 inches of rain this year. Where'd all the mud go? On Sunset. So I would like you to either do a site visit and just take a look at how our neighborhood was destroyed. Because I grew up in Chatham. I went to St. Pat's. You know what? I love my town, but I don't love what happened to it on my street.
We're definitely agree with you. We definitely agree. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. Please.
Hello, my name is Phil Tesserero. I live at the other end of the spectrum. I live at 50 Pembroke. And not to rehash the same feelings of my fellow township residents, I feel exactly the same way. What I want to come out of this is answers. I have the same 2 issues that this gentleman on Stonewick has. We have some ugly trees that were just completely butchered, just taken down just to meet the regulations, and they were left with no limbs, and they're 30 to 40 feet tall. There's 5 or 6 of them. I live right on the easement. Okay? 50 Pembroke is right, right there, and there's 5 or 6 trees with no limbs and no 50, 60 feet tall at least. No chance of growing any kind of vegetation back, and it's just an eyesore. So I'd like an answer on what's going to be done, a solid answer whether that vegetation on those trees are going to come back or if the rest of the trees are going to get removed. If none of the vegetation is coming back on those trees, it's just an eyesore. They need to be removed then. That's my feeling anyway. And also, I also disagree with the gentleman. By the way, thank you for coming out. I do appreciate it. But I disagree with the runoff. I believe the work that was done there increased the runoff by at least tenfold, because I've lived there for 15 years now, and I have not seen water come down this hill, and it comes onto Pembroke, across my house, and it does go into a catch basin, but I literally have to, if I'm taking out the garbage, I literally have to jump over a river to put my garbage pail on the curb. So I just want answers on how we're going to fix this. The damage is done. Please, let's see what we're going to do about fixing these issues, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Please.
Hi, this is Pooja Gupta. I live on 665 Fairmount Avenue. It's just next to the proposed AT&T towers. I moved in this town 2 years back, and now I think I made a grave mistake, but it's whatever it is done. Earlier, the AT&T tower planning, suddenly when we already had a T-Mobile tower just next to another post, another antenna, and now the sudden clearing of so many trees. I understand it's already done, so nothing can be done now. We can't save like any other trees. There's nothing left on the plot actually. Between 4 houses, there is more than 100 trees. I went and counted all the stumps. That's why they can't even tell you the numbers, because they've marked each and every tree over there. What I can just say is everybody's concern is about soil erosion. Everything is there. I think you have to do something on that. But the most important thing is if PSNG is saying they do all the environmental work, they should plant some trees here in the township in lieu of whatever damage they have done to those several trees. I think township should ask them to plant trees, at least the low height species on the line, whatever line they have between the owners, the nearby residences, and they should plant some proper looking trees at least to look, whatever disgusting is looking nowadays, at least to modify something. I think you guys should do that. At least tell them on the name of environmental, they do everywhere in the country, they should be done in the county here, at least in our town. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
My name is Sally Gregory Merrill. I live at 656 Fairmount Avenue, the lower part of where Sunset is. We have a triangular lot, so a lot of our property goes from Fairmount Avenue almost down to the circle behind us. And we've lived there for almost 28 years. I am seeing houses I have never seen before with this clear cut. I am not kidding you. I can see Axlin's house. I've never been able to see Axlin's house. I can see down into my neighbor's family room and what they're watching on TV. I mean, we knew when we bought the house, we were on the power lines. I did my research. You got more from your hairdryer than you did from those power lines. I wonder why now all of a sudden they're cutting the trees back as far as they have. I've never seen a clear cut like this. They've always come in 3 or 4 years and cut the underbrush and come in. They cut trees that were right on the line that would never reach the power lines. Mr. Arnold, I don't know if you're an arborist. Are you an arborist? Okay, you're a member of the Arborist Association?
I'm an ISA certified arborist, utility specialist. I'm also a New Jersey licensed tree expert.
Okay. My father was the same. He was an original arborist of New Jersey. And there's a bill coming up for vote in the New Jersey Senate. I don't know if you're aware of it. Are you aware of it, the vote? Yeah, I'm sure you are. It's Vegetation Management Proposed Bill S2505. We all have to call the senators and say, please vote this down. Because this bill says any tree or vegetation growing near a utility line is considered dangerous, and they can cut it down, and they don't have to notify any of us. Not only that, I did receive a notification from you, thank you very much, but nowhere could I respond to that notification, anywhere. That is non-existent in this bill as well. This bill has 7 different, the voice of the people is lost, the voice of towns is lost. They don't have to come for permits, they don't have to check with tree experts, they don't have to check with anybody. If they deem it dangerous, they can cut it down. That's pretty much what the bill says. This is from the New Jersey Tree Federation. They're voting it down because they don't think it's fair. I'm appalled, and I agree that, that we bought on the power lines, we knew we bought on the power lines, but I always said they were good neighbors. They never bothered us. We could encroach a little bit if we wanted to, which we did. There's like 5 feet of our property that we've mowed and planted grass very nicely. But we also had privacy. That privacy is totally gone. Totally. Come up to my house and look off my deck. I can see the whole Stonewick development perfectly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Jane Devlin, Chatham Township. Well, clearly the owners weren't notified, and clearly the damage has been done because of the tree removal to property, its values, and its aesthetics. But all these testimonies tonight via the public hearing give people a chance to share their stories and vent. But I would like to ask, please, what, if anything, is the town committee going to do to remedy the problem at hand and advocate for some type of restitution or answers for the citizens from PSEG? And I would like to ask, please, when will the town be answering the citizens and discussing a corrective plan of action? We appreciate you listening, but I don't think people just want to be listened to and felt they're being heard. I think they want some action moving forward. So in short, are you able to reply tonight at what step, if any, you're going to begin to take to help the homeowners? Thank you.
I have a different issue, so I don't know if there's other people who want to address it.
Anyone else would like to make a comment on this particular subject, PSENG matter? No. Okay, so floor is not open to other comments yet, but did we just change it? And are you making comments for other things? Other things, okay.
I think
So-
Mr. Chiccarone suggested that you combine
everything, okay.
combine everything,
All right,
and so
that's
that
okay.
everyone can speak, and
can
then you
go,
can complete
if they
your
need to.
your business.
If we're changing topics, can I ask a question of Rich? As it relates, I mean, just addressing the immediate concern the residents had in terms of, I mean, the damage has been done. It's horrendous, obviously. Everyone's really upset by this. In terms of remedying the situation right now, instead of, you know, the stormwater runoff, the grading, all the rest, instead of just planting flowers and stuff, is there consideration in the remediation of this sort of thing to plant trees that are 3 feet or shorter, or be it bushes, barberry, eucalyptus, boxwoods, something like that, where it will at least help maintain the storm runoff and the water and all the rest? Is there anything else, other options beside wildflowers, in other words?
Herbaceous, excuse me. Herbaceous vegetation also produces quite root systems that in most circumstances will help abate or prevent the erosion situations. We anticipate that that's just going to be the same thing here. That right away in the very center, save the outer 20 feet or so where these trees had come down, was not, it wasn't a forest. It was just low-growth shrubs, and still is, you know, low-growth shrubs and grasses that will come up in the spring. You know, that same type of vegetation is what we expect to be across the entire right-of-way. There wasn't any issues as far as runoff or erosion in the past, and we don't anticipate there's going to be any now. I respectfully disagree with some of the residents who state that if right now that there is dirt in the road, with my own eyes, I have photos of it from today. There wasn't. I know that's, you know, I'm not an expert when it comes to, you know, storm runoff and things of that sort. And any of the individual property owners who have any of the issues they brought up, I'm willing to address each of those individually. I'm not familiar with all the property owners here. So the different things that they brought up, I can't say whether they're, I don't know. I have no answers for them. So I'm certainly willing to address any individual and meet them on the property, you know, and however it needs to be handled. That's our standard process. If there was any breakdown, and I know there was a breakdown as far as the township being notified, and again, I had said earlier that I had identified where that was. That will not happen again. But as far as the individual property owners, again, it is our policy to notify the adjoining property owners. Even though it's not something we're required to do, it is something we do as a part of a policy. And if any of them were not notified, and where the work was actually being done, then there was a breakdown there too, so I need to know that. Now, our contractor is supposed to keep records of who they notified, and I can certainly verify that against the individuals. And if there are issues there, we'll address that as well.
And just thank you again for coming out tonight. I know it's a challenging conversation on both sides of the aisle, but hopefully we can remedy this.
Mr. Mayor, I know you were going to, I guess you're going to, it's your prerogative to go next. but it's a whole series of complaints and issues that were leveled at us tonight. And like Rich said, we'd love to get a chance to address them. If it means going, however you want to do it, Mayor, if it means coming together with a township, with a committee, and going through the complaints and seeing what we can do. If it means coming back to another council meeting, whatever you decide, we're willing to do. So, because we want to make sure that this, whatever issues there are, they're addressed.
Okay, great. And I think what I would suggest, if committee agrees, and as I spoke with you before the meeting, and I think the right course of action here that we should take, you go back to your corporate folks and powers to be and come up with some kind of resource allocation for this. So you're going to do things and you're going to come up with a plan and how to address, like Mr. Ritter said and other, many others said here. And we want you to come back to us with a plan of action, X, Y, Z. Those are the things that we can do. Then maybe we should work with John Rushke, our town engineer, and first go through that draft plan. Then maybe after that, we'll get the residents involved. And here is the plan that we got approved by PSCNG. And because you may say, I mean, this is not our responsibility, which you didn't say it, but you're going to be a good neighbor to us. So we're going to be a good neighbor, you're going to be a good neighbor, so we're going to be nice to each other. So, and I think your senior management will be open to it. I am sure about that. And just we need to come up with a timeline. So a timeline of actions. So we want it as quick as possible, obviously, and we'll get the ball rolling. And after this meeting, next day or two, we'll touch base again and come up with some timelines. And within that timelines, we need to make sure that we hit those milestones. And then at the end of the day, everybody's as happy as they can be. I mean, those trees will not come back, but we have to make sure we address our residents' comments and issues, because you heard us loud and clear, and it's loud and clear. So, and committee members, any comments? Because we don't want public to wait to make other comments. So, I mean, we want to be respectful to their time as well. And anything else from the committee members for this matter?
I do want to thank you guys for coming. I know that this is difficult. It has caused a great deal of upset in the township. And again, you identified where the breakdown was in not notifying us, because then that certainly gives us the ability to manage expectations or to go back out or to have preliminary discussions with you. So I greatly appreciate you guys coming out tonight, and thank you very much for the residents to coming out tonight. And hopefully we'll be able to find some sort of way to remediate the situation, in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Anything else? Okay, you're good. Okay. Then I think we're good with you guys for now. Thank you again for coming all the way up here and giving the presentation. Thank you. Great. Okay, please. And please introduce yourself.
I'm Carol Whip. I live at 2 Woodlawn Drive. I've been here before. I'm here again to ask for some relief from the catastrophe that's been ongoing in my neighborhood for going on 5 years now.
Carol, can you please speak into the microphone?
Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Okay,
I know
all
that
right.
it's-
Okay, all right, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Woodlawn Drive, this is a historic neighborhood. It was one of the first developments in Chatham Township. Originally, it was a neighborhood of modest Cape Cods on quarter-acre lots. And then in 2014, East Park Builders came to my neighborhood, and they have not left. And in that time, they have desecrated this neighborhood in every possible way. They've clear-cut street trees, created an unhealthy level of noise in clear violation of the noise ordinance, poured waste into our sewers that drain to the Great Swamp, left the worksite a mess, the porta-john on the street, sediment running into the streets, and have generally destroyed the aesthetic of this street by putting up houses that are too large for the lots and out of keeping with the rest of the neighborhood. On top of that, they have committed numerous violations for which there's yet to be any accountability. And now with these numerous outstanding violations at number 11 Woodlawn, East Park Builders is preparing to build another house at 3 Woodlawn, and they've already started breaking rules. They dug without calling 811, and apparently they used unregistered backhoe. So they appear to be lawless to me. Yet, despite this history, the township appears prepared to issue them more permits. So for me, there's 2 issues. One is the kind of transformation of Chatham Township into a town of McMansions, due to the lack of code that allows builders to maximize square footage without regard to proportion and the scenic impact on the rest of the neighborhood. The other thing is there's apparently no mechanism in the code for sanctioning builders who violate the code repeatedly. Now, I've been told numerous times that what happened at number 11 has no bearing on the status of number 3, that these are separate properties and the township can't refuse permits for number 3 based on the ongoing violations at number 11. Well, here's my argument. These are 2 separate properties, but they're conjoined by a single builder. So let me use this analogy. If I get a speeding ticket, I pay the fine, and we're done. But if I repeatedly get speeding tickets, they take away my license. I'm not entitled to a driver's license if I don't abide by the rules of the road. Similarly, I think a builder who has proven that he either can't or won't abide by the code doesn't get permits to build in Chatham. So there's just 2 things I want to ask. I would ask if you could put something into the code, something to the effect of 3 strikes and you're out. Something that requires a builder to be in good standing in the community, and that means no outstanding violations or no record of repeated violations before you get a permit to build more. The other thing I would ask you to consider, which I've asked before, is a floor area ratio ordinance or some other change to the code that would limit how much house you can put on a lot. The response I've heard in the past has been, we need to go slow. East Park Builders has been in my neighborhood for 5 years. How slow can we go? I think it's time to get something done. And just one last thing, Mr. Rushke has been very kind in terms of keeping us kind of abreast of what's going on. I wonder if you could just, off the top of your head, give people an idea of how many violations we're talking about, how many violations East Park Builders has accumulated, what these fines amount to, and also if you could tell us what is the current status and cost of the lawsuit that we have against East Park Builders. Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, that matter is currently in the municipal court. It is a litigated matter, and my recommendation would be that those questions not be addressed tonight because of the pending litigation.
The number of violations, we can't know that.
There have been violations, and they're pending before the municipal court.
Can we just know the number?
The answer is, I don't know, but I think it's not particularly relevant to the discussion. A lot of the issues you indicated are issues that the township does not have any control over. But in any event, it isn't before the municipal court as a litigated matter.
My point is that there's been repeated violations, and we are talking about them getting permits to build another house right across the street from me.
I understand your concern.
All right.
Thank you, Carol. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, good evening. My name is Jeanette Reed. I live at 10 Scenery Hill Drive, and I've lived there for 20 years. And I'm here just to really ask what the process is and to gain information. We have a house being built right next to us by NCN Builders. And my concern is there's only about 50 feet between our house and their house at this new construction. The land was flat. The rough grading has been done, And I have noticed there has not been one dry well put in place here. And I'm very concerned when I stand in my backyard, the pitch from that house, which he built up high, comes directly back into our backyard. And I'm very concerned with where we're going to go in the future with water damage. I have pictures here to show you what it looks like. I mean, it is significant. I also, with this builder as well, not once, but twice, he's encroached on our property and has broken our dog wire fence twice. I asked him very nicely, we wrote a letter very nicely, sent it certified mail, never heard back from him. I asked him, you know, this is $400 we're talking here, not once or twice, and his name is Nick. Nick looked at me in the eye and said, "Sue me," and walked away. That's how he dealt with it. So I'm here to just want to ask you, how do I deal with this? I've never had a problem. I'm the one who hosts our neighborhood functions all the time. I'm very cordial with all my neighbors. I don't want to run into a problem in the future with a new neighbor moving in. I'd rather deal with this builder before this gets worse. So, number one, what should I do? I'm here to ask for advice.
I'm the township engineer, you can call me. And when Tom does his presentation, we can talk in the hall.
Okay, okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
You mean you're not going to listen?
Is anyone going to listen?
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Mayor, Township Committee, I came tonight, I'm currently 25 years as president of the Green Village Fire Department, and we've had different committees, of course, over that course of time, and we've had one person who has been the glue between the departments and the committee, and that happens to be Tom Chickarone. And Tom and I have become very good friends. And I think both departments, both Green Village and Chatham Township Fire Department, are going to miss this individual when we hope we have the same relationship with our new administrator going forward. When I first walked in tonight with the mass people here, I said to Tom, I said, you know, I'm impressed, you should have retired every month for the last several years. Bring all these people in. He said, they're not here for me. You were right. Anyway, I stayed so that we can publicly thank you, and in 2022, on our 100th anniversary, I hope you come back.
I would love to, and I'll make sure you have my contact info so you can send me an invitation.
There's a great place down there in Cape May that has yards on tap. Try it.
I've
That's
had
it.
it, and I will, but...
And some of you I will see on Saturday night.
And thank you, Joe. I affectionately refer to Joe as president for life, because I think that's the assignment that he has. And he's been great to work with. The Green Village Fire Department does a phenomenal job for us. They saved my house. I actually told Joe, I think next time I'm going to dial 912, because they did too good of a job.
We do get that same comment from Fairmont Country Club. Let it burn.
Please.
Hi, Kathy Abbott, Wynwood Road, 40 Wynwood Road, and Tom, I would like to say goodbye because it's your last Township Committee meeting, so that's not why I'm here, but I have to say that.
No, I assumed it was, that you
No, you did
couldn't
not.
possibly be happier.
But I'm here with two questions, and they're financial questions, so maybe we would like information from Tom. One of them is people who asked me a question that I don't know the answer to, even though I was on the Township Committee at the time. When we had Hurricane Sandy and the colony paddle courts got destroyed, we decided not to rebuild. So the question is not rebuilding, but did the insurance money what budget did the reimbursement from insurance get folded into? Was it back to colony, or was it in the surplus, or some general operating?
Well, I think, as you probably remember, we don't really have a dedicated budget for colony. We have essentially three budgets. There's what we refer to as the current fund budget, which is all of our operations in our departments, Colony is one of them. So Colony Pool is no different than the Public Works Department or the Police Department or the Tax Office or any other of the operational programs or functions that we have. There's also then two sewer utility budgets, Sewer 1 and Sewer 2. So the funds that we got from an insurance claim for damage to the Colony paddle courts or any of the other damage that we received funds back from FEMA for cleanup and those sorts of things, those come in as general revenue. They go right into our surplus account, and they reimbursed things that we typically already spent. In the case of the paddle courts, I don't remember exactly how much the damage claim was paid for, but I think, memory serves me correctly, it was somewhere around $2,500, which would not have been anywhere near enough to rebuild that court. As you know, they were old, the understructure. It really was destroyed, and it would have meant building from the ground up and building brand new court.
And we didn't get money for rebuild?
We didn't get enough, no.
Okay. Second question is about affordable housing, which came into play again after I was gone, I know, 2015. And I've read through the facts on the website, and I think that we need more FAQs about why we've chosen the options we've chosen, which is to let a builder do a trade for, I'm not even sure what, but the builder, I believe, there's two builders that are dealing with Dixie-Dale Farm. One was a regional East Coast, like the Northeast major builder who's contracting with the local builder who also built the large townhouse development behind Ace Hardware, or next to Ace Hardware. And so if that's, it doesn't matter exactly who, but it would be good to know, well, it does matter, but I mean, it's the financials. Why was it better to make a deal with a builder who's, then we're giving them land and also giving them a deal to run the affordable housing for 30 years, rather than go the route of that other towns have gone, like Madison, like I believe it's Morris Township, where they spend millions of dollars building affordable housing as 100% affordable housing to satisfy the state requirements. Were we doing it to save money? And if so, what were the trade-offs? What was in it for the township, and what's in it for the builder? And what is the deal they're getting that makes it so attractive for them to take what we've given them, or going to give them? And the 30-year, how profitable is it to run affordable housing for 30 years?
I'm not sure how much of that I can or should answer, but the simple answer with regards to Dixie-Dale and the skate park is that there is typically an obligation on developers to provide a set-aside when they do a development where they are getting some sort of relief from the municipality. So they approached us looking for, if you remember now, that's about a 30-some acres down there. And under our zoning, they would have only been permitted to build roughly, let's say, 13 to 15 homes, single-family zoning. They asked for relief from that, for permission to build additional homes, but in return, address affordable housing. So they're building 50 units, getting 4 out of the existing mansion, converting that into 4 condominiums, so a total of 54 units. And for that, they're going to build 24 affordable housing units. Now, that ratio is much, much greater than what the regulations and the courts have previously required. Typically, the set-aside is about 15 to 20%. So they're doing about a 50% match. So that was really the impetus there as to why the township was interested in making a deal with them. And
they approached us, though.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay. And why are they using there's the larger builder, I forget, I didn't look up the names.
As far as what their business relationship is, I don't know, but it's Sun Sterling Homes. They've formed a partnership. Whether they will be the ones who actually see it all the way through the end, that's not something I'm privy to.
Okay, because I know that we, just like the Woodlawn builder, not just like, but in some respects like the Woodlawn builder, the Sterling builder in the development by Ace Hardware had some violations and issues and negotiations with the town back and forth. So I just want to point that out. I can't accuse them of doing anything in the future. And I don't, and I wasn't on, all I'm saying, I'm being extremely general, so, and I.
Yeah, but if I may, I mean, it's not like, we selected them. They were contract purchasers. They were under contract to purchase Dixie Dale. So we didn't have a choice of, choosing somebody else. They were the purchasers of that property. So they approached us with what their development plans were and with an offer to greatly exceed their obligation with regards to affordable housing. So that's
Because they saw it as a good deal anyway, yeah.
Well, of course.
Okay,
But,
so,
I'm sure we're
and
not
then,
looking to lose money, but at
Right,
the same
yeah.
token, there are other elements to the settlement and with the Fair Share Housing Center as to what our total obligation, our total plan is going to be. The Dixie Dale Skate Park development is a portion of our overall plan.
and we have no obligation to that same construction company to use them again for future affordable housing that we.
No,
No obligation.
none.
Okay, and what type of company normally runs affordable housing, like the one that has been going on for 20-something years down in, what's it called, Mount Vernon?
There is no company that runs the housing down there. The units down at Vernon Grove are owner-occupied units. The difference here is the units that are going to be constructed at the skate park site are going to be rental units. So there's a big difference in the way it's managed. We have a responsibility with regards to the Vernon Grove properties that when they are sold, they are still restricted as to the sale price, and we have an agency called Piazza Associates who handles the marketing and the sales of those units. We used to do it in-house. If you remember Ruth Sabonia, Ruth used to be the Glenwood Housing Corporation secretary, and she handled all the administrative portions of those transfers when they happened. There came a point in time that the state mandated that you separate that out and have a housing agent who was not a municipal employee. And it was at that time that we contracted with Piazza Associates to perform that function for us. And I became the housing liaison, which is an employee position. I'm not sure if Bob knows that he's going to get stuck with that, but surprise.
Well,
so I don't know how else to answer your question.
No, well, actually, I think we have these frequently answered questions that I think are from 2017, frequently asked questions and answers, and it would be good to actually break apart what was just done here and put it on the website. And also, so then we need an agent to manage these rental units that will be at the skate park site, right? So we're saying that, and it happens to be that it's already guaranteed to the builder, or they might find another, or we could find another agent.
Answer to two questions. I am working on a supplement to the frequently asked questions to update it. As you know, it was just recently that those, at the end of December, that those items moved forward, so I am working on that. There is the administrative agent that Mr. Chiccarone mentioned, Piazza and Associates, will continue to manage those new units.
The new units?
Yes.
Okay.
In the same way that the ones at Vernon Grove are being managed.
Oh, okay. I thought I had heard that the builder was managing it for 30 years. That's not true.
No, there is a deed restriction that the property, property will have to be used for affordable housing for low and moderate income households for 30 years.
Okay. All right, that sounds more logical, so, all right, thank you for answering all the questions.
Thank you, Kathy. Anyone else from the public? Okay.
Please don't let Kathy have the last word on my last night. Dorothy, you don't have something to say?
Okay, great. on to the next item on the agenda, which is the preliminary budget presentation.
Can I just tell you a very quick story? I promise it'll only take
How
a minute.
quick?
When I left the borough of Avalon, the night that I announced that I was leaving, that I had been appointed as the city manager in Brigantine, I made a little speech. I probably got a little bit choked up. I'm a little more emotional tonight. But that was the end of the meeting. It wasn't like tonight where it came at the beginning. And I thought I was getting the last word. It was a mic drop moment. And then a member of the public got up, and Avalon is a shore community, as most of you may or may not know. And this guy, Bill, I forget his last name, got up, came up to the microphone and said, "What are you going to do about the seagulls?" And then he sat down. And there was a discussion about that. So, anyway, that was my mic drop moment in 1991. Is that in focus for everybody? And can we maybe just dim those lights over the screen? So I'm calling this budget preview because you will not be ready to introduce yet. As usual, the introduction has been, those dates are in a state of flux and being pushed by the state, and until you get state aid numbers after the governor's budget presentation, nothing can be finalized. But this budget that I am going to present to you tonight, I think it can be a finished product if you want it to be. Of course, it becomes yours after tonight to kind of do what you want with and to review with Mr. Hoffman. And as I said, it becomes yours to do what you want. Start just by reviewing some important documents, as I do every year. The first mandated document that is prepared and filed with the state of New Jersey is the annual debt statement. This provides a picture of the town's debt at the end of the prior year. So as of December 31st, 2018, this is where we are. We have $23.6 million of school debt. We have $8.7 million of sewer utility debt, and we have $13.7 million of municipal debt. The way the debt statement works is, of course, the school debt is not our budgetary obligation, and the sewer utility obligation also, as I mentioned earlier, there's a separate budget, so that's not part of technically of the municipal debt. It's not backed by taxation, but rather by the user fees for the users of the sewer utility. So the portion that is really the municipal budget portion is the $13.7 million in municipal obligations. Down below, you see, and I have edited this just for clarity. There's the 3-year average of our equalized valuation is $3.5 billion, and our debt, that $13.7 million, represents 0.39% of that averaged equalized valuation. So that's call it 0.4%. What we're allowed under state statute is 3.5%. So as you can see, we are well below any limits on our debt. And this slide represents the results of the operations from 2018. This is basically how you replenish surplus. So these are, we have excess collections for miscellaneous revenues, delinquent taxes, current taxes. Myrna is miscellaneous revenues not anticipated. So that's again a bit of a misnomer, because in the case of a lot of this, we do expect to collect it. These were rents, for example, from the Board of Ed, rent from the cell towers that everybody hates so much. But we don't anticipate them as a revenue in the budget for purposes of balancing the budget. We take them in as Myrna, and they help to restore the surplus that we do use. The unexpected 2017 reserves, this is the monies that were appropriated in 2017 that were not paid out. So at the end of the succeeding year, they stay in reserves for 1 year. Any bills that come in that are legitimate to be paid against those reserves are paid against the reserves, and then at the end of the 12-month period, they lapse to surplus. There's some other minor miscellaneous credits of $92,000, and then one, I think that's actually, there's two little pieces of other debits. These had to do with refunds that were directly against surplus. So the net result of that is that you put $3.3 million back into the surplus that we ended 2018 with, 2017, and then used, and we'll get to that slide right here. At the end of 2017, we had $3.9 million in surplus. We used $3 million of that in the 2018 budget. I just showed you how much we put back. So the balance at the end of the year, we put back more than we used. So the surplus balance has grown back to $4.3 million. That, by the way, is in keeping with the policy that the committee adopted. At this point, I guess it's probably about 5 years ago that we adopted a formal surplus policy that established a target range for how much surplus we would maintain after using some in the budget each year, and we continue to be within that policy that was adopted. This is a slide you see every year for people that may not be familiar with it. The state of New Jersey imposes two caps on our budget. One is on the appropriations, that's the spending side, and then the other is the levy cap. So the spending cap is tied to the consumer price index for the prior year. The cap has been set by the state at 2.5% for this year. The levy cap is fixed at 2%. That is not subject to change. The levy cap is fixed at 2%. The appropriations cap fluctuates with the consumer price index. And as I said, this year it's at the state maximum of 2.5%. You can exceed the 2.5% if you do a cap bank ordinance, which is on the agenda for tonight and which we typically do every year. This is the appropriation cap calculation. If you look at the 2018 budget, it was a total of $15.8 million in spending appropriations. You deduct from that amount the LoSAP contribution, that's the Length of Service Award Program for volunteers, the Fire and Emergency Squad. The library, grants, capital improvement fund, debt service, and reserve for uncollected taxes all gets deducted from the general appropriations so that the amount that the cap is applied to is reduced. So the actual amount that the cap is applied to is $11.5 million. When you do the math, 2.5% of that gives you a cap of $288,772. That's the amount that we could increase spending within the cap without exceeding the state mandate. We have bank from 2017 that's available for this year of $390. We have bank from last year of $111. So the total that you could increase spending within the cap is $790,000. And I can assure you that we are going to be way below that again. So you will be banking stuff. The 2017 cap is going to lapse, but you'll then have 18 and 19 cap for use next year in 2020 if you should need it. This is a summary of the numbers in the budget. You can see that I'm proposing and recommending that we use $3.2 million of surplus this year. That is an increase over the $3 million that was used in 2018. But again, the surplus balance was increased, and this stays within the recommended or adopted formal policy. Local miscellaneous revenues are actually reduced. State aid, this is really a guess. It has been the same number for, I think it's about 7 years now. No idea what Governor Murphy is going to be proposing. I haven't heard anything yet. There's been no inside word on that, but my expectation would be that it'll probably be about the same. Public and private programs, the reason you see a big difference here from 2018 to 2019 is grants. There were a couple of large grants in 2018, the sidewalks and road and those kinds of things that have not yet materialized for this year. Grants that might come through later in the year wind up being appropriated as a budget amendment later. But as things stand right now, the public and private programs is at $57,000. That includes, by the way, I would like to mention a $30,000 grant from the Chatham Women's Club that's going to, for the use of the police department. There's also a family that has left a grant for the police department of another $10,000. So proof that our citizens really do love our police department, and Tom Miller in particular. Construction code fees are anticipated to stay about the same. Library taxes are up a little bit, and local purpose tax is projected to be increased from 8.8 million to 8.8 million, an increase though of about $53,000. The net effect of that we'll get to later, but that will be an actual slight reduction in the local purpose tax rate. General appropriations, you see, reduced by $239,000. Reserve fund collected taxes, roughly the same. And overall appropriations reduced by $236,000. Now again, I caution you that doesn't have a direct correlation to the tax rate because of the public and private programs that are there that have a revenue and an offsetting appropriation. They don't impact the taxes. This is the levy cap bank calculation, and again, you'll see that we have never exceeded or really been up against the levy cap except for last year, 2016. We have bank levy cap bank still available for this year of $720,000. 17, there's $332,000 of levy cap bank that's still available that could be used this year if you needed to. We did not have any levy cap bank last year. In fact, I think used a little bit of the 2016 bank that was available. So the total levy cap bank that's available is $1,042,000. The levy that is allowed for this year is $9.2 million. The levy proposed is $8.8. So you will add additional money back into the bank where the 16 is going to lapse. You will have an additional $371,000 in levy cap bank available for future in the event that something crazy happened and you needed to do that. State aid, again, you can track it if you go back to 2007. We were receiving $1.2 million from the state. You saw a steady decline, and then in 2011 it went to $836,000. It's been there ever since, and as I said, I would predict that it'll probably be around the same number. School taxes, I like to show this one. It went from 2007, where they were at 25.8 million. In 2018, it was 38.9 million. You can really call it 39. And there's been steady increases every year. Likewise with the county, although the county, has been pretty good lately at holding their rate. What you always have to remember with Chatham Township is that the municipalities are apportioned a piece of the county taxes based on the proportion of ratables that we have. So even if the county has no increase in their budget and no increase in their tax rate, it doesn't mean that you're not going to see an increase in Chatham Township. And you can see, I don't think we've ever had a year where our contribution to the county did not go up. Last year it went up a couple $100,000. This is the municipal purpose tax rate, tracking all the way back to 2007 when it was at 28 cents per $100 of assessed value. And if you follow it right on down the page, we maxed out it in 2010 at 29.6 cents, and then we started a steady decline, minor decline, but pretty much holding at no change. 2015, we actually were able to provide a decrease. 2016, again, was a decrease. 2017 stayed about the same. Last year, because of all the things we talked about last year that happened at the end of 2017, we did have a 1 cent tax increase last year. This budget that I am presenting to you tonight has about a 0.2 of a penny reduction. So it's minor, but for the average homeowner, it probably mean about $15 a year. So I hope they don't spend it all in one place. This pie chart shows you how local taxes are used. That is, each dollar that is collected for local purposes. Again, this is putting school and county aside. The money that is kept for local government, 22% is public safety, 21% is public works. You would, I think, expect those. Insurance includes our general liability, workers' comp, and the employees' health insurance program at 19%. General government, that's basically everything else, is at 11%. The reserve for uncollected taxes is about 10%, and library is 8%. I didn't do my little speech about the reserve for uncollected taxes yet, so this would be maybe an appropriate time to do so. Again, for those who have not heard before or perhaps forget, the reserve for uncollected taxes is not delinquent taxes. What the reserve for uncollected taxes is, it is what's referred to as a non-spending appropriation. So the simplest way to explain it is that we are the collector for all three agencies that I just spoke of, the county, the school, and ourselves. We have to collect everybody's money. The county and the school get 100% of their levy, whether we collect it or not. So we know that when we take the county levy and we take the school levy and we take our levy, if we send out tax bills that were just to cover the actual budgets that were adopted, if we didn't collect 100% of what we billed, we would be short. So the reserve for uncollected taxes is a non-spending appropriation that we carry in our budget so that we essentially artificially bill more than what is actually needed for the three agencies in order to make sure that the county and the school, after they get their 100%, that we have enough to meet our obligations. So that's what the reserve for uncollected taxes is. This is the total distribution of the tax dollar in 2018. This really has been pretty stable over the last few years, although the schools piece is gradually moving up. It's at 69% of the dollar now. So every dollar we collect, 69 cents goes to the school, 16 cents goes to the county, and we keep 15 cents. 15 cents of every dollar that people send to us is what we use to run the municipal government. We're required by the state to disclose any structural imbalances in the budget. There are 4 categories. Revenues at risk is the first. There are none to identify. Non-recurring cost reductions, there aren't any. All the cost reductions are considered to be permanent in nature. We're required to anticipate increases in appropriations for next year, and it is expected that labor costs would increase by approximately 2% in 2020. Health insurance costs, although this year they really stayed pretty flat, I'd like to project that because of historical trends that you can likely anticipate 5 to 10% increases. It may very well turn out that it again is below that, but for purposes of putting people on notice as to where the potential increases are, insurance cost is one that I'd like to point out. And the structural imbalance offsets, this really goes hand in hand with our overall operations, and that is that we continue to look for reductions in personnel costs and for additional shared services. And I'm sure that that's something that Mr. Hoffman will be pursuing with our neighbors. Summary, this budget provides for a decrease in local purpose tax rate of about 1/10 of a cent. Average household savings about, it's even less than I guess than what I just mentioned, $10.59. The end of 2017 surplus was at 3.9 million. The end of 18 it was at 4.3. Municipal open space tax, I'm assuming, and for purposes of my presentation, I'm assuming that the committee will leave it at 1 cent again this year, but again, that's your prerogative. As you know, you can go anywhere from 0 to 2 cents per 100 based on the ordinance that's in place. And the increase in the township's contribution to the library is increased by just under $49,000. Sewer utilities are in healthy financial condition. We had a much better year in 2018, again, after fixing the problems that we had in the tax collector's office. Collections were back up where they belong, and the both sewer utilities are in better shape with increases in their surpluses at the end of the year that will make it much easier to put together the 2019, or did make it much easier to do the 2019 budget for the utilities that won't require any kind of a rate increase. And the last big thing that I want to leave you with is a recommendation that you hold a municipal bond sale in April. We have been accumulating debt each year that you do a bond ordinance to authorize capital projects. Our typical first means of financing is to do bond anticipation notes. Those are only good for 1 year at a time and can be rolled for a total of 10 times. After the third year, you have to start paying down on the principal. So we have a number of notes that have been out for a while that we have been paying down on, and in consultation with bond counsel and with our auditor, I feel that it would be appropriate this year, as we see interest rates starting to creep up, to go ahead and retire that temporary debt and go to permanent financing. So what you'll see when you go through the lines of items in the budget where we have had, last year, for example, I think we had a pay down on those notes of about $300,000. In the 19 budget, there is no pay down because we're going to pay them off. So you'll see a little bit of a reduction in debt service for this year, but expect that in 2020, as the new bonds come on, that you'll be making principal and interest payments. So in 2020, you'll see an increase in debt service. I don't think it will be a whole lot more than the $300,000 that's coming off of this year, but I don't know until you actually, put that all together. I do have a meeting Monday morning for Bob's first day with our bond counsel and our auditor. After we have our welcoming breakfast, we'll be reviewing that and starting the preparations for the bond sale to be held in the spring. Capital budget, and again, refresh everybody's memory, the capital budget portion of the budget does not appropriate any money. It's a plan for what we expect to need to do. I can tell you that we're looking to continue with road paving improvements. The Chatham Township Fire Department is looking for some 2 new trucks. I think it's a rescue truck and a brush truck. The total of that request is about $1.1 million for those 2 trucks. DPW continues to need equipment. Rich is actually asked to replace 3 large dump trucks. I've recommended in the capital budget that he get 1 this year and that you space it out to either do the other 2 next year or 1 each of these 3 years. And then we're also looking to do improvements to Nash Field, including upgrading the lights and improvements to the fields and the skating area. I have had discussions with the Chatham Athletic Foundation, and I expect that they will be contributing to the upgrade of this facility, including the lights. You'll recall that last year the Athletic Foundation made a $100,000 contribution to the borough for the renewal of the turf at Lum Field. The turf at Shunpike continues to be in great condition. We don't expect to have to do anything there for many more years. I would go out on a limb today and predict that it has at least 5 more years of life left in it. So the Athletic Foundation actually does have some funds. They've had, I believe they've had a preliminary meeting with some of the members of the board. They weren't all able to be present, so a final decision has not been made on this, but I'm going to put them on the spot tonight and say that I expect and predict that they will contribute $100,000 towards that project. The skating area, as you know, is also part of that facility. We would like, or I'm recommending, that you consider doing some more permanent improvements to that would allow for that skating area to be used not just for ice skating in the winter, but perhaps like street hockey kind of activities in the spring and the summer. So when we do the upgrade of the lights, I'm going to recommend that besides just lighting the fields, that there be some light standards placed on the back side of the poles that could light the skating area in an appropriate and safe fashion. So that's it. The actual budget document will be prepared and presented to you prior to your February meeting, and if any of you have any questions or want to come in, I did have a meeting with the Finance Committee with Mayor Sellon and with Tracy Ness yesterday. Also had the opportunity after that to meet with Mike and gave them all kind of a preview of what I just previewed for you tonight. So if any of you have any questions between now and next Wednesday, feel free to give me a call. After that, there's the man. And of course, Debbie King is also, quite capable of answering your questions about the budget and the finances. So that's it. Thank you. I'm pleased to be able to once again leave you with a good budget.
Thank you, Tom. Anything, anyone? Okay.
I did want to ask a question, Tom. I didn't get a chance to ask it. Well, we talked about it a little bit in our finance meeting. I, too, have been speaking with the Chatham Athletic Foundation, with Bob Budlow and the group about their kind of winding down of their programs. We haven't met with the Joint Recreation Committee. That's not happening until February, but we did talk about funds for the field. And we also talked about possible funds for moving of the skate park. I wasn't able to provide them with any hard data or cost associated with that, but I'm hoping that maybe we can come up with some sort of cost about how much it would cost to move the skate park or something along those lines. And if you can tell me offline, we can meet again offline or try and come up with a figure like that, because as they're meeting, they're looking to disperse these funds, and I have put that request in.
Yeah, and I'll just say the same thing that I've said to you yesterday and that I've said here in this room, that at the present time, the township doesn't control any land that I think would be an appropriate site to relocate the existing skate park. I certainly hope that you're able to do so. It is a facility that gets a lot of use. It does have a real regional attraction to it, as I've said before, and I've encouraged the committee to perhaps try to pursue something with our neighboring towns or with the county to do a regional facility. We just don't own land that's not encumbered in some fashion, either by wetlands or wood turtles or blue spotted salamanders, or that were specifically restricted to passive recreation when they were acquired with Green Acres funds. So that's the real difficulty. I hope that you are able in the future to find something, and if you do, maybe you consider naming it the Chickarone Skate Park.
There we go.
That'd be so great.
Okay. That's fine. Then we'll discuss about that further. I'm sure after you're gone, it's going to be in this year's matter. So now moving on to the introduction of ordinances, we have three ordinances. I'm sorry.
He's right here.
Yes.
On cue.
But keep moving. Keep going.
All right. So three ordinances. I'm going to start with number one. The ordinance number 2019-1 repealing subsection 11-1.6 Construction Board of Appeals. I'm just going to read the ordinance heading here. An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, repealing subsection 11-1.6 titled Construction Board of Appeals of section 11-1 titled Uniform Construction Code Enforcing Agency of Chapter 11 titled Building and Housing of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Chatham. So, would you like to, Albert, is that yours?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Would you like to give us some background on this?
Yes. It was brought to my attention that the township has in its code book a construction board of appeals. However, as I understand it, and I have no recollection of this, since I've been your township attorney, I don't think that board has ever been staffed with volunteers. The construction board of appeals does appeals from certain uniform housing code violations, but the reason that I'm recommending this ordinance is that the Construction Board of Appeals is really duplicative of the County Construction Board of Appeals. So even if you had the local board of Construction Board of Appeals, their decision could be appealed to the county. So it wouldn't end the matter locally, there'd still be a second avenue of appeal. The county Construction Board of Appeals, the members are drawn from throughout the county, and one of the things that they try to achieve is uniformity in how those appeals are handled. In essence, this removes one layer of government that has not been functioning, hasn't been staffed, when there is the perfectly acceptable method of handling one of these appeals at the Construction Board of Appeals, the County Construction Board of Appeals. So for that reason, it's my, and also, and just as a point of reference, in other municipalities that I have or have represented now or have represented in the past, the general consensus of those communities has also always been to not have a local board of construction appeals. So for those reasons, I would ask that you act on this ordinance by introducing it tonight, publishing in the normal course, and then having a public hearing at your next meeting.
Thank you, Albert. Do I have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Second, and a second?
Second.
Second. And Greg,
Is there any discussion?
do we want to, anything to discuss? Any comments from the committee members?
If not, Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yep, yes.
Mr. Ritter?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
And Mayor Solon?
Yes. And motion.
And public hearing will be on February 14th.
Okay, great, thank you.
Valentine's Day? Are you for Valentine's Day?
I know.
Be here.
It's just love all the time.
Bring cupcakes.
The next ordinance.
I want to stay married.
That's right. Next ordinance, 2019-02, liquor license fees amendment, and I will read it real quick. An ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 6 of the Township Code, amend the annual renewal fee for liquor licenses. Greg, would you like to do some background?
Yes, the history of this ordinance is that back in 2012, the Township Committee voted to adopt an ordinance that allowed for the creation of a third plenary retail consumption license, and at the same time to begin the process of raising the liquor license renewal fees. The statute allows for a maximum renewal fee of $2,500, and from 1 year to the next, the fee can be raised by either $500 or 20%, whichever is less. And if you look at the ordinance, you'll see that the consumption license fee is already at the max. This ordinance continues the process of raising the plenary retail distribution license fee toward that $2,500 max. I think it's roughly $325 increase from last year. So if the committee desires to continue that process, that's why I put this on the agenda. And by doing it now, it also allows, since the budget is being developed, it allows for that to be factored into the anticipated revenues.
Greg, did you say that the committee had created an additional consumption license?
It changed the ordinance to allow for the creation of a third consumption license. The number of licenses that you're allowed to have is based on population, and we have enough population to allow for the creation of a third one if the committee so desires. The two that are currently in use are Charlie Brown's and the Fairmount Country Club.
So, I mean, the third consumption license, I mean, that's been around forever and a day. And that's
No,
only for like
the third, it was created about a half dozen years ago. At the time, the Ace Hardware Drug Fair property was sitting vacant, and the committee was looking for ways to encourage redevelopment of that site. When it became known that you had the ability, the township had the authority to create a third based on our population, the committee chose to do so with the expectation that perhaps it might attract some restaurant or something into that facility, but that never materialized, and in the meantime, Ace Hardware moved in and I think is thriving there. So I think at the present time, there probably isn't an appropriate location, but the committee still has the ability to offer that license for sale at auction if somebody could find an appropriate place to put it.
So if a restaurant wanted the consumption license, they express an interest and then it goes to auction, or how does that?
Yeah, I think it's either sealed bid or auction, I'm not sure which.
It has to go out to bid.
But is there a starting bid, or
You can set the upset price.
any idea what the current market value for something like this would be?
I do not know, but the Township Committee can undertake a study, can consult with realtors that specialize in the sale of liquor licenses and get a feel for what the market value would be. But ultimately, the test of market value is whether someone is interested in purchasing it or not. So you can certainly set an upset price, and if there are no bidders, you can go out again. There's no limitation on the number of times that you can solicit bids.
Are there conditions?
Yes.
You have to have an establishment or something, or just plans for an establishment, or what's the?
And they would have to pre-qualify as well. They'd have to have all sorts of police background checks and sources of funds be disclosed. So it's basically they would have to do everything that they would need to do in order to qualify to purchase a liquor license.
And the consumption license can't be converted to a distribution license?
No.
And we're only limited to 2 distribution licenses?
Correct.
We actually have more than we already would have been allowed. I think it's 1 license for every 7,500 people, and we're only at 10,000, so we have one that's grandfathered from before the current limitations were set. Whereas with the consumption, it's 1 for every 3,000 people.
Chickarone restaurant, maybe.
Snappy Tom's.
Hey, I like it. Let's
Now,
do it.
Do I have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Anybody second it? I second it. Greg?
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Swartz?
Yes.
Mr. Ritter?
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Slin?
Yes.
Public hearing on February 14th.
Next ordinance, we're moving up on ordinance number 2019-03, ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, NJSA 40A 4-45.14. Tom, would you like to give some?
Yes, Mayor, as I mentioned in my presentation when I discussed the cap bank, or the levy cap, the state allows you to, by ordinance, increase the amount to set your cap at 3.5% instead of the state mandated 2.5%. So that additional 1% is allowed to be banked for the future, for the next 3 years, again, in the event that you should need it. So we typically do this as a matter of routine business. It does not mean that we are going to spend that money in this current year. In fact, the budget that I have presented to you tonight does not call for spending more than the 2.5%, but it does anticipate doing the cap bank and banking it for the future. That's all this does. This does not authorize any additional spending.
Great, thank you, Tom. Okay. Do I have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Seconded. Any discussion, committee discussion?
Second.
No discussion? Okay, Greg?
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Swartz?
Yes.
Mr. Ritter?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Slin?
Yes. Thank you, Greg. And we're moving on to the consent agenda now. Consent agenda are the routine items that may be passed by a single roll call vote. Any committee member may call for a separate discussion or vote on any item. Greg, would you like to read those items, please?
Yes, this evening we have Resolution 2019-41, payment of bills, 2019-42, receipt of reports, 2019-43, approving meeting minutes, 2019-44, approving executive session minutes, 2019-45, recycling tonnage grant, 2019-46, amending the terms of employment for Township Administrator, 2019-47, outsign lead and redemption, 2019-48, authorizing change order for the Chatham Heights Lift Station Improvements Project, 2019-49, awarding contract for pump stations electrical improvements, 2019-50, transfer of appropriation reserves, 2019-51, authorizing membership in NJW CPS, 2019-52, authorizing sale of surplus equipment, and since we didn't vote on it before, we should add Resolution 2019-54. That's the resolution honoring Mr. Chickarone.
Okay, great.
You want to do a separate vote on that in case?
Now,
If I may, can I just address one so that there's no mystery about this? The amending the terms of employment for the new administrator. When the original terms were prepared, Mr. Mason, who had been hired by the committee to do the search, sent it to me for making sure that it complied with our overall policies and that applied to our employment practices. And there were a couple of things that apparently had been discussed with Mr. Hoffman and agreed to that I was not aware of, so I hadn't included them in that first draft. And it was basically two items. One was to cover membership in the International City Managers Association and travel to the conference. And the second item, I think, was provision of a smartphone. So those were added, and that's what you're now voting to just formally amend what had been agreed to previously.
thank you, Tom.
It does say in the agreement that he's entitled to 19 vacations.
Ooh.
So
Each
it
10
might
days.
just be, it might just be a misprint.
Yeah,
But 19 vacations
19
is
one-day
really-
vacations.
19 one-day, they're called day trips.
Where do you see that?
It's just a misprint. I'm sure it's just a misprint. Huh? It's in the backstory of the,
Because 19 is not the right number. He's entitled to 20 days a year.
The letter?
it's in the
It's in-
one that's written in alternate font, if that helps you narrow it out.
The contract, second page, item G actually says RH will be entitled to 20 vacations.
20
You're right.
You wait, 20?
20
I thought it was
vacations.
19.
Vacation days.
Vacation days. There you go.
Okay, I'll amend that for the signed version.
Of course. Can I just ask, just to clarify, 19-052 regarding the auction of DPW, that's just the same format we have used over the last several years. It's going to be an auction that's run through Gov Deals, et cetera. Nothing new about that. Thank you.
Tom, can you talk about the Resolution 45, the recycling tonnage grant? Is it, I know it's probably a perennial thing, or details on that?
No, every year, the recycling coordinator, who now is Christy Tragno, submits a grant application to the state for the recycling tonnage grant. You'll see it in the budget every year. This is the resolution authorizing the submission of that grant application. We haven't received a new grant yet, so this is the authorization to go ahead and submit it. She collects all the figures from recycling that we do, as well as all the commercial properties in town, how much shop rate, that all becomes part of our recycling tonnage that we get credit for and apply for grants from the state.
Gotcha. Any update on how recycling's doing these days? It's still a losing venture?
Yeah, I think for the foreseeable future.
And what is the grant, Tom, that we get back? Did we get back about $30,000 last year?
In recycling tonnage?
Yeah.
No, I think that typically runs about 18,000, Deb, off the top of your head? Yeah, it's mid-teens is the recycling tonnage grant,
It's going down?
like the Titanic.
Right,
Okay.
thank you for that clarification.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Seconded?
Second?
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Ritter?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Salid?
Yes. Okay, great. And we're moving to a discussion item, possible ordinance or resolution, and bylaws amendments. And Albert, would you like to give some background on this discussion item for the bylaws?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There are two amendments proposed to the bylaws. One is to clarify the term of the mayor and deputy mayor, and who chairs the reorganization meeting until there is a mayor selected by the Township Committee. That one amendment clarifies that the terms of both the mayor and deputy mayor end on December 31st of each year. And the second amendment to that is that the clerk will chair the reorganization meeting until a mayor is selected.
Thank you.
Thank you. See some of you Monday, if not.
Yep.
We'll see you Monday.
See you Monday.
Take your sign, Tom.
Take your sign. Here's your sign, what's your hurry?
Where's John, want to get the sign?
You're using the public, you're using the public resources for your personal.
Treasure map.
Matt Miller made that? Made the bottom of it. I don't know if anybody cares, but on the end, it's actually embossed, it says Tomcat.
We know that, local
Good night, Tom. Thank you.
Good night. Vio con Dios.
You want to drop your mic?
The second amendment deals with when a committee-elect person may receive access or be invited into executive session and receive access to the same materials as the remainder of the Township Committee. What that bylaw change or revision provides is that once the newly elected committee person is certified that as the winner of the election, then that person is granted access to the same information that you are in terms of preparation for the meetings, executive session, and participation in the executive session. The primary purpose of that is to allow for a transition to occur between an outgoing committee person and an incoming committee person to make it a little bit smoother and allow that person to be able to start the year fully knowledgeable of what is occurring. Your bylaws did not provide any guidance on that, and so my recommendation again is to include that guidance not only for yourselves, but also for the administrator, the clerk, and myself to be able to properly give you advice in future years. The person that is granted this access does so with the understanding that they're bound by the same confidentiality requirements as you are. Very often what happens is municipalities do this by custom, and it's an unwritten practice, but it should really be codified in your bylaw so the committee's aware of what the rules are and your staff and professionals understand what the rules are. So again, that would be a recommendation that I would make.
Thank you, Albert.
And Albert, heretofore the process for getting a new member, a non-inaugurated member, has been sort of an ad hoc decision.
Correct. That
They'll sit with the administrator, they'll sit with the attorney, perhaps sit with an ally on committee. These things are appropriate to be discussed in sort of a confidential one-on-one, getting up to speed kind
Well,
of thing?
again, that's the
or-
whole purpose of this, is to allow the incoming person to have the ability to become knowledgeable of what is transpiring. If someone were to meet with me, I obviously would use my judgment in
Right.
terms of what information I would disclose, but in any event, it would be, if I was disclosing any confidential information, it would be with the clear expectation that confidentiality would be maintained. there is one exception to this. If there's a vacancy on the committee, and then that vacancy is filled by the vacancy law. As you know, once you select one of the three candidates, that person can immediately take office. So obviously, there's no transition there. But when someone is certified, when the election occurs in first Tuesday in November and is certified perhaps within 10 days after that, 15 days after that, absent a contest about over the election results, there really should be, in my view, no reason why that person should not be granted that access. And again, it's primarily so the clerk, the administrator, and I, as your attorney, know what the direction is to take, and it doesn't then become an ad hoc decision. Should I do it? Should I not do it? You have not a default position, but you have an actual guidance.
Thank you, Albert.
As it relates to the First Amendment, is there clarification in terms of how this came about or what it's all about?
Again, the issue is the term of the mayor ends on December 31st. The term of the deputy mayor ends on December 31st. Just to give you an example, if Mr. Sullivan had been the mayor last year, he lost the election. He could not have come back on January 4th or 3rd, whenever your reorganization was, and chair that meeting. That would have been done by the clerk. Again, that is more consistent with law, more consistent with the way other municipalities handle it. And again, it's a clarification and really just reinforcing what is in fact the law.
Okay. Crystal ball. Okay.
I just want to say that I greatly appreciate not having being ad hoc decision, not being included in the meeting that occurred in December or the executive sessions. I think is a disadvantage for anyone who's coming on as a new committee member. So that was a disappointment not to be included in those meetings on an ad hoc basis when it had been done in the past. So I think by codifying this, regardless of whoever comes on the committee, they'll be afforded the same opportunity.
That is a point that I neglected to make. It is neutral. It is all of these all of these changes to the bylaws are simply neutral and revisions that are clarifications and enhance your bylaws.
All right, so do I have a motion to approve the discussion point? Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it. And now is the time for discussion, but we already discussed it. I don't know if you want to discuss it further. And no? Okay. Then, Greg, please.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mr. Ritter?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Mayor Solen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And
Now, the next step with this, Greg, is that it becomes an actual ordinance that's been introduced now formally?
No, it's the, in your packet is the amended bylaws resolution.
Right.
So that's now
It's
a
now a
bylaw.
resolution?
Yeah.
And it's been introduced?
No, it has now been adopted.
This document replaces what you adopted on your reorganization meeting.
Right.
So it is the document going forward.
The end.
For now.
Got it. Okay.
Your resolutions are adopted on the first reading. Yeah, so had it been an ordinance, then there would be introduction and, yeah.
Okay, now it's time for hearing for citizens. I'm not sure. Anyone? Okay. Now, I'm closing the floor for the citizens and hearing of the citizens. Now, next item is the executive session.
Yes, sir, I'll read the resolution. Resolution 2019-P-02, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded, whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Potential litigation, East Park Builders LLC versus Township of Chatham. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion and in any event when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13. The committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Thank you, Brad.
Now we need a motion and a second.
Is there a motion to go into the executive session?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Mrs. Swartz?
Yes.
Mr. Ritter? Yes. Deputy Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
And Mayor Solin?
Yes.